Welcome to Mic Drop, the podcast where relevancy is irrelevant and we don't give a shit about your feelings.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure and honor, as always, to welcome a U.S. Navy SEAL, graduated BUDS Class 215, was at SEAL Team 5, served with the 19th Group Special Forces Reserve Unit out of Watkins, Colorado, was a contractor for Dynacor and a host of other companies at the height of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and then came back home and continued to serve with the Phoenix Police Department for 8 years as a patrol officer and undercover narcotics officer. Please welcome to the Mic Drop podcast, Clark W. Griswold Impastato.
Thanks for having me, brother. This is awesome.
No, man, it's an absolute honor and a pleasure having you here. Little backstory for the guests. Clark and I graduated BUDS together, and we're obviously tight teammates back then. We've always been kind of good friends, but just have lost contact over the last number of years. So I haven't talked to Clark in quite a while, and so half of this podcast is kind of chronologically delving into his story, which is I wouldn't say it's common, but it's for sure a type of story that's an occurrence that happens with a fair bit of regularity for guys like us, that when they get out, they continue to serve in a host of different capacities, whether it's with contracting groups, whether it's with police departments, or a mix of the two, like in this case. And to me, because that's such a recurring theme that happens, I want to let you guys in on it and kind of, see what happens with a lot of these guys, no different than me. And that, when you have a skill set that's very, very particular and very specific, not to sound like the fucking movie Taken, you got a specific set of skills. But the fact is there's not a lot of transferable jobs out there or careers that's like, yeah, we need people that can go be fucking violent at the drop of a hat, and be accepted by society. And so, this is a fairly common experience for guys getting out, and I would say that of all the guys that I keep in touch with, most of them have similar stories, and without a doubt, to me, it's fascinating, and I think it's important for you as the listener, to be able to kind of delve into, both the psyche, the mentality, the experience that happens for lack of better terms, trained fucking killers once they get out of the military. Like, what do these guys do? And this is what a lot of guys do, and it's really, really important work, and it's fucking exciting and interesting. There's a lot of pretty nutty stories to go over, that happen, post 9/11. So we're going to get into all this stuff. But what the other half of this podcast is Clark and I catching up, which again, the personalities that I think you run into a lot of times in special operations, obviously specifically as it relates to the SEAL teams, is very, very unique in terms of kind of a bullshit session that we would go through if we haven't seen each other in a while, and kind of catching up. So it'll be kind of a mix of those two things. I think you guys are going to enjoy it, and I'm happy and honored to bring it to you. Without further ado, we're going to get right into it. And one of the things I do like to do is what I call the lightning round, which is where I catch you with your pants down a little bit and ask you some stupid-ass questions. But just, get your brain thinking and working. And then also I like fucking with people. So the first question is a little bit serious, just in terms of morning routine. Now, I know, with our backgrounds, a lot of times, I get asked all the time, like, dude, what do you do first thing in the morning? I'm curious. I like to ask, all the guests, like, tell me about your morning routine. Like, what do you do when you first get up?
Yeah, typical morning for me, it's pretty consistent. I usually get up about 7 o'clock. My coffee is pre-workout, so I'll take some No Explode and get the engine revved up. And then recently, I'm about 8 months into playing guitar, so I'll spend an hour in the morning.
First thing. I just love it. I've always been interested in it, and I picked it up recently. And so part of my routine is, no matter what happens in the workday or afterwards, I at least get an hour in. So a little pre-workout,
and about an hour on guitar, and then start getting ready for work.
Do you find that the pre-workout makes the shredding better? I mean, like as it's kicking in and you're fucking getting after it, like are you just dropping some dime bag solos or what?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm discovering some of the secrets of rock and roll I can't quite partake in, but pre-workout's close enough. So man, it revs you up. I start to play some of the earlier Metallica stuff.
Yeah, fucking A, the heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Shit, yeah. So obviously, one of the things that Clark does now, which we'll get into, but teaches tactics and shooting for a host of different military and law enforcement and civilians. Kind of utilizing all of his skill sets. But anybody that's been in the military or done contracting or both, I always like to ask, what is your favorite pistol? I know, like with me, like I have a bunch, but there's one in particular. Like you have to pick one. What is your favorite pistol?
Yeah, this bad boy right here, the SIG P320. I'm in love with it, man.
Oh, shit. What is it about it that you like above everything else?
Well, as you know, I was raised in the teams with the 226. Didn't have a lot of firearms experience prior to that, so I was just kind of partial to that platform. But being left-handed, all the controls are set up for right-handed shooter.
I'm left-handed.
Oh, you know my struggle then, bro. We speak the same language, so we had to Jimi Hendrix some shit. You know what I mean? I think I became a better shooter than average because I had to figure things out. Mm-hmm. I had to spend more time back, in the room, whatever. Same thing for you, I'm sure.
Especially a 60.
So, I was a 60 gunner too. I had to employ that right-handed because it ejects brass backwards. But anyway, SIG I was kind of partial to. But throughout my career, we switched to Glock. So we were training some law enforcement cats at executive protection stuff, and one of them had the new 320. So I said, hey, do you mind if I shoot that? And I was so impressed.
You didn't give it back?
No, pretty much. In fact, I said, I got to get one. He said, hey, that dude over there sells them. And I broke out the credit card, and right then I got it. Yeah. But the simplicity of it, the accuracy of it, it's got ambi controls. I could switch it out and stuff. So really, to me, it was a game changer. Prior to that, when I got into the teaching side of things, I was using a SIG 229, which is the shorter version of what we carried. Still a fan of that, but I enjoyed that it was a consistent trigger squeeze. You didn't have the double action, single action thing. And so the simplicity and accuracy, I was sold, man. I love it. I still shoot it to this day. I mean, it's... Yeah.
Well, after we get a few more beers in, we'll have to take it out and shoot, because that always mixes really well, drinking and shooting, right?
Yeah. I'm sure the neighbors are going to love us, man.
I definitely, before you leave here, I'm going to have to check that shit out. But that's awesome.
Very cool.
Dovetailing onto that, I have to ask too, what is your favorite defensive round for all you gun nuts out there? And even if you're not, just as kind of a quick precursor is that, there's a lot of different rounds out there and people talk about ballistics and stopping power and things of that nature, but I have my preferences, but I'm curious to see or hear your take on what round do you like to use when you're carrying concealed. If, somebody is rolling up to your window and you want to put a fucking barn door in their spine, what do you like to roll with in that?
Yeah, nowadays I'm a 9mm dude. Yeah. When I was on the streets with Phoenix, it was a 45. I carried a Glock 21. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of that old school mentality of, the big caliber, the big dumb slow bullet and all that stuff. But because I train it kind of started out as a cost saver. Obviously, buying lots of 9mm is cheaper than 45. Yeah. But I am a big believer. For me, it's all 9mm now, which is very common to our roots in the teams. Mm-hmm. It's shot placement. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's one thing I've always. I get asked all the time too, like, what do you like, what do you carry, whatever. And to me, ballistically, whether you're shooting a 22 or a 45-70, like if it's going where it needs to go, it doesn't fucking matter. Yeah. But on the transverses, if you're missing, guess what? It doesn't matter either, Yeah, so I'm the same way. I carry a 9. I'm a Glock 19 guy, but same thing. Like I shoot the 9 all day long. I have some 45s and some. I have a couple 357s and 357 SIGs. I don't like the 40. Yeah. But the other thing I'm curious, not just caliber, but actual, brand of defensive round that you like. Do you have a preference, or you just?
Not really. I think in there I have, I want to say it's Winchester. It's a bonded hollow points. Yeah. So they hold together a little bit better. Yeah. I'm not super into, the ammunition technologies come so far with all the plus P and different things like that. So Pretty much just buy a good name brand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, to me, I like the Spear Gold Dots for that reason. They're a good bonded, hollow point. But I'd say probably the one that I roll with almost all the time is the Federal HST, which is it's a jacketed hollow point, but I've done a fair bit of testing with it, and I've never had any failure where any of the pedals are coming off, or it's splitting up in gel blocks or frozen sides of fucking beef or turkeys or whatever. Even in water, it does well, but. I really like that round, but yeah, I agree. I mean, shit, there's so many out there that it's hard to even know what to pick, but that's definitely what I like.
Yeah, definitely.
What's your favorite cut of meat? And that's beef, goddammit.
Favorite cut of meat?
If you tell me you're a pescatarian, I'm gonna stop the interview.
All right, well, it's been nice seeing you, bro.
Yeah, I only eat fish. Sorry, buddy. I'm fucking out of here.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a favorite cut. I'm just a huge fan of beef in general. I love steaks. I'm not. I think I've just lived in enough foreign countries. I'll kind of eat what's available. I'm a bit of a survivalist when it comes to cuisine, but just a good, a good cut of beef, man.
Well, we're gonna have some ribs that we showed you here earlier, some beef ribs that are kind of my specialty. But we'll see what you think of those here in a bit.
Nice.
Most embarrassing moment as a SEAL.
Oh, yeah, dude. So we were Birdless Wonders doing platoon support out at RItland.
Yeah.
And there were 4 of us new guys. And so we had 12-hour shifts, and we decided we were going to take the day shift, even though it was hotter, because we wanted to go out into Brawley and drink and, be goofballs. So we were on some makeshift, target site, and we knew there were snipers watching us. So me and my buddy, we decided that we were going to do patrols naked. So we had our boots, boonies.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, that's right. It's when I started my Magic Mike career, apparently. A lot of nudity in the teams. I'm sure we're going to cover a lot of that here in a while. Right. But, I was naked with my AK, boonie, and boots, and I was doing jumping jacks and clowning around and giving the snipers something to, hopefully laugh at or whatever. And this van comes around these little hills, the Chocolate Mountains out there, and I thought it was the dude that was kind of taking care of us. And sure as shit, it was his van. But as it got closer, I noticed there was someone in the passenger seat, and I was like, oh, shit. It was the CO of 5. I was like, he gets out of the passenger side. I'm like, oh, fuck, are you kidding me, dude? You're still a birdless wonder. You're still in no man's land. You ain't there yet. Yeah. So he gets out, calm as a cucumber, comes right up to me, and I'm kind of at a modified position of attention. I just kind of stand up straight, and I'm like,
so you had a hard on? Is that what you're saying?
It was a semi. I wanted to, but I was nervous, so... Calm as a cucumber. He walks up to me and he goes, "Are you Impastato?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Did you study Japanese in college?" I was like, "Yes, sir." He goes, "You want to learn Korean?" I'm like,
naked? Sure.
Yeah. Well, I said, "Yes, sir." And he walks away. And I was like, does this dude know I'm naked? And he gets about 5 feet from me and he just turns back and he goes, you show up to class wearing some clothes, because they sent us to San Diego State to learn Korean, which was a mistake. But I was like, I was so nervous. And so for the rest of my time there, I could never make eye contact with the dude, man. I was always embarrassed. Like,
Jesus Christ.
Now he knows the truth about the Tic Tac, I think he always felt sorry for me.
Oh, God damn, that's fucking great. And then, there's about 30 other stories equally as ridiculous that we'll get into here with some of our experiences at Bud's with the ghost masturbator and all that. But yeah, you didn't think you were hoping I didn't remember that shit. Right, no, we're covering that. Oh, you better believe we're getting into that.
I forgot about that. Yeah,
well, I didn't. So that's good news.
I hope my mom's not listening. I'm sorry, Mom.
Oh, Christ. What's your favorite Kool-Aid flavor?
Watermelon.
God damn.
Yeah, man.
All right. Best hazing story ever.
Man. Best hazing story. Like my hazing or just a hazing that happened in the platoon?
I mean, shit, whatever strikes you as being like, that's the best hazing story I've ever come across. I mean, that you were either being hazed or doing it, but...
Well, yeah, my hazing was typical. I was naked, duct taped in a 69 position.
There it is, naked again.
There's a lot of nudity in the teams.
Yeah.
The odd part about that is they put us in the meat locker out there at RItland in the kitchen.
No pun intended.
The meat locker, right? Yeah, there was a lot of meat. Well, they forgot about us, and they actually came in concerned like an hour later, like, oh shit, are these dudes frozen together? Little popsicles in the 69.
Holy Jesus.
But it was a funny one, but it was a little bit scary. As they obviously they duct taped this dude naked to a chain link fence, and it was his 21st birthday. So they decided to give him a 21 bun salute with simunition. And they let those sim rounds rip on this dude's butt cheeks. But you know what sims do to you, especially 21 of them in an area. And we were all like, oh, like everybody was frozen, like, oh shit.
It fucked him up, huh?
Yeah, it was bad, dude. We were all like little kids where you throw the rock through the neighbor's window and you freeze, like, oh shit. So that was one that stands out for sure, man.
Jesus.
Oh, fuck.
Oh, there's a million of them. Fucking million of them. I have to ask, and this is one of the more serious questions. What is your favorite cheese?
Ooh, I love cheese, man.
Who doesn't?
I try to stay away from it because my dad bod's in full effect. But dude, my favorite cheese, I just like a good mild cheddar, man.
Right?
It's kind of ghetto, but yeah, just.
That's pretty basic. I thought you were more refined than that.
No, man,
that's it.
Nothing fancy
not
here,
smoked
man.
Gouda or fucking camembert, like just
no, mild cheddar.
All right,
sorry, dude.
Christ, I'm fucking keeping it real. All right, nothing wrong with it.
I could buy it in bulk.
Fucking government will hand the shit out.
That's right. It's free.
It's fucking free. Fucking wheel of cheese. All right, so last lightning round question. What book are you currently reading? And if there isn't one, what's the last one you read?
The last book I read was actually...
You mean you're not currently reading?
No, I've been on the road, man.
Hey, it's no excuse.
I know. The last one was the Admiral's book, Make Your Bed.
No, yeah. McRaven?
Yeah,
no shit.
that was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I feel guilty like that dude's watching. Guess what I do every morning? Swear to God, I make my bed because I'm like, somehow he knows, dude.
Creepy Uncle McRaven looking over your shoulder.
Uncle McRaven's like, did you make your bed? And I can't lie to him. So seriously, after I read that book, I'm like, he's right. At least I will accomplish one task today.
One thing. Play guitar and make my bed.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, good stuff. So now I want to just kind of go down the roster, if you will, of your experience and delve into, the nuts and bolts of again, the experience, that so many guys like us can identify with and that a lot of people are interested in. And I think it's important for them to hear about, what makes guys like you do what you do, what makes you tick, and then ultimately, what experiences you've had that have shaped you into who you are today. So you were born in Colorado Springs, which, when I did the Jay Dobbins interview, the ATF guy, that there's a lot of similarities that I'll draw from during this interview in terms of some of your experience. But, come to find out, when I grew up in Iowa, it was the Sons of Silence, which was a big motorcycle gang that was prominent in Iowa, originated in Colorado Springs. Just real quick, like, did you ever remember that, seeing or hearing about them growing up?
I never saw those dudes, but they were kind of urban legends. Like, you knew about them in town, and you always heard about them, and you were kind of like, but I never came across them. So I actually lived probably 20, 25 minutes outside the Springs. So if they came up into my house, they had to have dirt bikes. So
so probably not. Probably no knobby tires showing up on the fucking hogs, right? So growing up in Colorado Springs, one of the things that I'm curious about, and I know a lot of people ask, me and other guys like us, what was growing up, just in kind of generally speaking, was there any sports that you played and excelled at, or, was there anything that from an athletic standpoint that you focused on that kind of contributed, with physical fitness being as important and physical prowess being as necessary as it is in our line of work? Like, what physical experiences shaped you as a kid growing up prior to joining the Navy? Yeah,
when I was a tiny kid, soccer was big, probably part of my Italian heritage. But I lost interest in it. I was fairly decent at it. I was left wing. Probably around the junior high age, I discovered hockey.
Oh, no shit.
I played a little pond hockey growing up, but nothing serious, and just caught the hockey bug. So through junior high and high school, that was my big sport. Of course, I wanted to play for the Bruins and all that shit. That didn't happen, but so it was those were the two main sports. I dabbled a little bit in wrestling, didn't like it. Played a little football, pee-wee football, and I played one season in high school, but it wasn't my thing. So it was soccer as a kid, and then hockey is what I really focused in on, and that's kind of what started to form that team concept, and also like a contact sport.
Yeah.
It really showed me. I was a defenseman, so violence was kind of my. I liked it because I didn't have to worry about scoring goals. I just had to fuck that dude up scoring the goal. You know, and I was like, I can do this. This is easy. You know.
Yeah, you know, it's hockey is an interesting sport, I think, and it's one I you know, similarly, like growing up in Northern Iowa, I did a little bit of pond hockey, but I mean, I never played in any organized leagues or anything like that. You know, I fell through the ice a couple of times and about shit myself and about froze to death. But very limited experience, just, you know, kind of dabbled a little bit. But I've always been fascinated, like especially with our culture being as fucking emasculated and pussified as it has become, that hockey is one of those sports that still allows people to just beat the shit out of each other. And the crowd goes wild and everybody loves it. And it's like, how has that managed to slip through? I mean, I'm fucking glad that it has.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, was that, obviously that was something that had an impact. Like, you know, violence is kind of the universal language there. Like it is. It's a sport that's pretty much based on fucking each other up. You know, there's some finesse with the skating and shooting and stuff, but a lot of that sport is just pile driving the shit out of each other.
It's a ballsy sport, and what I like is I always say it's one of the hardest sports to play because a lot of other sports, like you're on the ground, you're doing something that's natural, you're running or whatever. Yeah. As soon as you get out on that ice with your blades, it's like it's a whole new world, so you got to get good at that. And then as a defenseman, you have to be able to skate backwards just as good as that dude skates forward. And it's violent, but there's a lot of skill set involved because you could be bigger and stronger than me, but I'm better on my skates. Yeah. So I can dump you and stuff. And so it's
kind of like water polo in that way. Like, you know, the first times in the teams, like playing water polo or fucking underwater hockey, like the team PTs, like, you know, the water and the ice are quite the neutralizer that way. You know, guys that are bigger and stronger, like if you're better on skates or better in the water than them, then you'll own their ass, you know. But I just, you know, it's one thing that I really like about hockey is you know, it's a fucking man sport where people just, you know, knock the shit out of each other and it's cool. Like they're not getting penalized, being by and large, obviously high sticking and cheap shots aren't cool, but like just the mano a mano, like leveling each other. I love it. You know,
typically they'll let it go until one dude overpowers the other dude. Yeah. And so I don't know about nowadays, but it really, to me, it was an introduction to, I hate to use the word violence, but contact. Yeah. And not to be scared of it, that, you know, sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail, dude. I mean, sometimes you're going to get your lunch handed to you, but you usually, you know, shake hands and hug the dude. It's, you know, at the end of the game, you come out of the locker rooms and be like, dude, you whooped my ass. That was awesome. You know, and the crowd goes wild. And so it's kind of gladiatorial in a way, you know, but it definitely shaped an early part of my personality to realize not to be, you know, don't be scared, don't be a pussy. All that made sense, but it just that, like, sometimes this is okay. It's a part of that community. And so I think that helped me out in the military early on, is that, hey, this is a contact sport. This is a blood sport, and things are going to happen at times. So even as a kid, I think hockey was very, you know, fundamental in that.
Yeah, you know, to me, there's an element of that I think is missing in our society by and large, and that, you know, the reality of it is we're all still fucking animals, and violence is a universal language. Like, you don't have to speak it; it'll still be spoken to you.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and learning at a young age, you know, let boys be boys, let them fight. You know, let them figure shit out on their own, because it's a necessary skill set, and I think technology has hindered and blinded human beings to that fact. You know, because there's not a necessity for it in some aspects of our society, but there needs to be, because, you know, especially with social media and social justice warriors, you know, people that have a real big fucking mouth behind a keyboard, you know, but, you know, won't have that same level of accountability when you're standing in front of them. Yeah. You know, I think is a detriment to our society. And I think hockey and, you know, some other sports, whether it's MMA or other full contact sports that teaches, you know, combativeness but respect for an opponent and things of that nature is a big element of our society that's missing, that I wish there was more of. But at any rate, you know, it's cool to hear that you know, that hockey's played such an integral part in your growing up. I am curious, you know, just like with me, you know, and some of the experiences I had in terms of high school turmoil and things like that. But, you know, were there things growing up that shaped, both who you are and, whether it was relationships, tumultuous relationships with family or, anything traumatic or anything? Was there any kind of highlight moments growing up that impacted you and either steered you into service or just, really had a prominent impact on who you are and why you are the way you are?
Yeah, I think the number one thing would be my mom. I was raised by a single mom. She raised me and my brother. She never dated. She just was
toe in the line.
Yeah, stand on her own 2 feet and make things happen. So I saw that as an example of, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, show up to work, handle what you got to do. She tried to fulfill that mother and father role. So as an example, she was huge in my life, but also being raised by a single mom, it kind of gave me a sensitive side to life. Like I always say I have I'm kind of a crazy dude, but I have a woman's heart. Like I understand, I empathize with things.
Yeah. So where you were trying to hold my hand?
A little bit. I was like, I'll be Little Spoon. But definitely that was a big thing. But luckily she was a strong woman. She's tough. She's from New York. She's born in Manhattan. So I'm still scared of her. I'm scared of like 3 people. She's one of them. You know what I mean?
That's great shit.
And then also we grew up isolated. Like I said, we were probably 20 minutes in the hills. So growing up, there weren't a lot of neighbor kids.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time out in the woods playing Army guy. Mm-hmm. Ended up growing up to join the Navy, but kind of weird. So I would just had my BB gun and I was outside. I mean, I really came in just for meal times and just built tree forts. And I had to kind of create my own scenarios. I had my Australian Shepherd kind of raised me.
Yeah.
And so my dog and a BB gun out in the hills, and I conquered the world as a kid, or at least, an acre or two,
Yeah. I mean, that's your world growing up,
So, I think those two things really shaped who I was. And also kind of growing up, not really lonely, but not growing up with other kids. When it was school time, bro, I was the class clown, obviously. Yeah. And so I was like a little Robin Williams, man. I was entertaining and like I enjoyed the company of my peers when I had those moments. So I guess that's 3 things now. Yeah. I'm not so good at counting, but
I'm not so good on the arithmetic, but in terms of, I know for me, like both my grandfathers served in World War II. One was in the Army, one was in the Navy, and for me that was like a huge inspiration growing up. I didn't really know my dad's dad. I mean, I met him a couple times, but he died, when I was a little bit younger. But my mom's dad was very influential in my life, and he wasn't opposed to talking about it, but didn't go out of his way to talk about it. But but I remember a number of stories of him talking about being on a minesweeper in World War II and all this other pretty wild shit. But it just to me, like, it was about wanting to do my part, in terms of serving. But I'm curious, what was it that inspired you as you going through high school, and did you learn about the SEAL teams? Did you was there anything that was kind of instrumental during that period that really was kind of that light switch of you saying, you know what, I need to go fucking serve in the military, and this is why I'm going to do it?
Yeah, definitely. As a kid, my mom, she was part of the World War II generation. So as a kid, we watched a lot of World War II movies. Yeah. Tora, and, Midway and all this stuff. And I always thought, damn, that's just something epic's going on here. Even as a kid, I couldn't put, my finger on it, but I knew, like, this is something that I could see, that greater cause, something bigger than one person. So I was always fascinated by it. Until high school, when the Gulf War kicked off, and it was when CNN was new and it was 24 hours. I don't think I slept the entire time. I was just glued to the TV watching the invasion, and I was like, I gotta do this, man. No shit. So that was definitely the moment when I said, when I'm done with education, I'm gonna do this.
No shit.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting about that? I'm a few years younger than you are. For me, I was in junior high. I was in 7th grade. And I remember being scared fucking shitless. Like, it was the opposite of that, like I literally, and I'll be the first to admit, like when that went down, like I was glued to the TV, but for the opposite reasons. Like I was like, holy fuck, I hope I never have to go do that. I was scared. I was scared that our country was going to war, because, it was like being born in the late 70s and growing up in the 80s, which was like MacGyver and Knight Rider time of like just everything was cool, fucking Airwolf and Street Hawk and
dude,
like all these
awesome.
Badass shows.
The A-Team, dude.
But it was like nobody ever really got hurt either. It was like,
true,
it was almost a manufactured sexiness to it, and And, so that was the first slap in the face for me as a 12-year-old, that I was just like, holy shit, like that's for real. Like our country's going to war. I hope I never have to do that. And then literally, a couple of years later, it was the exact opposite. But, it's neat to hear, the inspiration from every service member, because I mean, the reality of it is that there's not a service member veteran that exists today that there isn't something like that, and they're all unique. Everybody has their own path, their own story. And I always love to hear fellow veterans, upbringings and kind of what channeled them into the service in that regard. But that's neat shit. So from the sounds of it, you graduated high school. You went to college for a little bit?
I did. Yeah.
What was that all about?
Well, I went to college because that was kind of the normal thing to do. In fact, at that time, I thought of either becoming a cop or going to college. And so I remember talking to some dude at a precinct. I think he was a sergeant. And he said, hey, you're too young. Join the military, get some experience, and then, come back. So I said, all right. So I went to Adams State in Southern Colorado. And my major was elementary education. I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher, probably because kindergarten cop had just come out, and I thought that was cool. And I went down there, and I ended up hanging out with this gal. We ended up, long story short, having a couple kids. So freshman year got real serious. We didn't have a couple kids within a year's time frame, but
how's that happen? Yeah, I'm not a biology major, but
they were twins.
Twins, bro.
No, yeah. So she got pregnant freshman year, so things got real serious. Yeah. I had to have 2 part-time jobs plus a full loadout, which was good. It actually saved me from a lot of the shenanigans that happened in college.
Yeah,
kept me focused. We ended up having a second kid. By the time I finished my junior year, the kids were getting older, and I thought, damn, I don't have a steady paycheck. I don't have health insurance. I know I want to do this military thing, but I was thinking of, maybe the officer route. In fact, between my sophomore and junior year, I went out to Quantico to Marine OCS.
Oh, shit.
And I hated it. It was a bunch of yelling. I was like, holy shit. So they have 2 options for you. You can either go to a split course, 2 6-week courses, or you can go to one chunk 10-week course, the combined course. So I chose the split course. So I went out there for the juniors course out in Quantico, and it was miserable. My luggage got lost. I didn't have anything I was supposed to have. So I was the dude right off the bat they focused on. I'm like, this sucks. All this yelling about starched camis and shiny boots. So I hated it. And it was at that time that I found a book on sale for $5 at a grocery store called Red Cell.
Oh, Jesus. Fucking Marcinko.
So that was the introduction to the whole SEAL thing. And I remember talking to this dude who was a former Marine at the college I went to, and he said, bro, don't join just to join. Have a purpose, or the military will find a purpose for you, and it sucks.
And it's going to be whatever they need.
Yeah, the needs of whatever, So he said, do some research. This is, mid-90s, so there wasn't a lot of info out there. You can't just YouTube everything. So it was still a mystery. So I did what I could do to research stuff, but I stumbled upon Red Cell, and I was like, holy shit, these dudes are awesome.
Yeah.
And then I started to find out names, and there was a couple Vietnam-era books out there. Point Man by Patches Watson. Love that book. Yeah. So
just real quick, not to interrupt, but for the listener, Red Cell, Dick Marcinko, that's SEAL Team 6, basically when it started. And for a lot of us, myself included, read either Rogue Warrior or Red Cell, a combination. Dick Marcinko was the commander of SEAL Team 6 in its inception, basically. And Red Cell was a story where they basically tested the security elements and parameters of different installations, be it government, military, et cetera, ships, security, stuff like that. And that was their job, was to try to infiltrate and test, you name it. I mean, whether it was the highest level at the White House or whatever, it was like, they were tasked with doing that stuff. So just, so that you guys, understand where that's coming from. Like for a lot of our guys in our era of the SEAL Brotherhood, the Vietnam guys, James Patches Watson and Dick Marcinko and even Carlos Hathcock and, the Vietnam veteran, pipe hitter powerhouses had a huge influence there. But sorry, continue.
Yeah.
So I know what's going on.
No, awesome. Yeah, I forget because we're just 2 dudes chatting. But absolutely. And that Vietnam era was just amazing. Those are really the only stories we had access to at the time because not a lot was going on. So I just fell in love with the book and the characters in the book and the people. And And I get a lot of people hit me up on social media, what do I do to prepare for buds and stuff? And so my formula was the mindset portion, which is the most important part. I could actually picture myself with these dudes. Not only did they have similar personalities and cared about certain things, professionalism is marksmanship and PT and not shiny boot stuff.
Yeah.
So I agreed with that philosophy, but the more I read, I pictured myself like with these dudes. Like, damn, I think I can hang out with these dudes. You know what I mean? So it made it humanized it for me. I think a lot of dudes look at the teams and other units as like superheroes or untouchables, but these books really added to me the human element to it. And I said, damn, I think I belong in this community. Like I feel more comfortable reading these books than I do interacting with people at college or, whatever circles I was in. I just never felt quite right.
Yeah.
And talking to other team guys, it seems to be, we were all kind of the troublemakers until we got to the teams and we're like, oh, dude, there's a bunch of us. It was like I found my little basket of,
of crazies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that definitely reading that book started me on that path. But I was still in the Marine Corps officer program. I was going to go back after my junior year to the senior course out there, and then I was going to be commissioned as a second lieutenant upon graduation. So I had to call my officer selection officer and say, hey, check this out.
Yeah.
I want to turn that
on a switch.
Yeah, I want to join the Navy as an E3. Yeah. And so he goes, listen, obviously I believe in you. I put you in my program, but do you know the chances of you making it in that program? And I said, look, I'm not really interested in percentages or numbers. I have this feeling. So he said, do me a favor, hang up, make out a list. I want you to physically write down a list of pros and cons and call me back in 30 minutes. I said, all right, cool. So I did. I did the little pros and cons. The cons way outweighed the pros. The pro was just like, because I want to. And the cons were like, I'm turning down a college degree. I'm turning down a commission, finances, all this other stuff. And I called him back and I said, well, I got your list. And I read it to him. And I said, but I just have this wild hair up my ass about this buds thing and the teams. And he said, well, if that's what you got to do, I'll support you. So I had to go with a Navy recruiter to his office. He signed some papers. They signed some papers. I must have bought a house in the process. I signed so many papers. I had to pay back the money that they gave me while I was in college and stuff. So my mom was not happy at the time. She'll deny this, especially if she hears this. I had to make a tough phone call now because she's proud. Here's my son in college. He's going to be a Marine officer. Wrong. I call her up and I said, well, this is what I'm doing. And once I told her that I wanted to be a Navy SEAL, her first words were, they're a suicide squad.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah. She denies this to this day. I'm like, oh, I remember specifically. And so now, of course, you know the deal when she introduces me. This is my son, Clark, the Navy SEAL.
Yeah. You're like, Mom, it wasn't always that way.
Yeah, exactly. You remember the suicide squad? I never said that. I'm like, yeah, you did. So that was kind of my entrance into the military community was a little shuffled, but once I enlisted in the Navy and ship off to boot camp, I was a little concerned about the uniforms, but other than that, I fitted in well and it was good.
It's interesting you bring up the visualization piece. It's something that I talk about with dogs a lot, is that a lot of times people come to me and they say, well, I just can't get my dog to do this or whatever, and visualization is such an important and powerful component to our lives, and I don't give a shit what you're talking about. I mean, we did it. I was on the swim team all growing up, and we would all lay in like in the locker room, like we'd all be scattered out, like fucking bunch of dead bodies, and the lights are off, and the coach is in there, walking us through, like walking up to the blocks, and what it sounds like, what it smells like, what what the rough blocks feel like on your bare feet, like that intricate of detail, and walk you through a race where you crush your personal record and whatever, and like the impact that has, I don't think people that haven't done it or don't, a lot of people don't realize how incredibly powerful that is. And just like you said, like I don't care if it's going through SEAL training or mastering how to bake a fucking cake. Like if you visualize yourself just destroying it and crushing whatever goal it is and do it over and over and over, like it becomes part of you.
Yeah.
And for anybody listening, like if you're not a believer, try it. Like when you lay in bed at night, spend 10, 15 minutes visualizing. It's a good way to turn your brain off or into a different mode where you get ready to sleep. But but it also is beneficial. And again, whatever goal it is that you have, like that shit is powerful. And I do the same thing with a lot of stuff, but it's neat to hear you had kind of a similar experience, getting ready to join. But one of the things that that I'm curious about, because I didn't spend any time in the fleet, is that so you join the Navy. I'm sure your recruiter screwed you over and fucking told you one thing, and and another thing happens. You probably want to wring his neck. But what was it like? Tell me about your experience of being in the regular Navy before you went to SEAL training.
Yeah, so I fell for the old trick of, hey, go in undesignated, bro. You don't know what you want to do. You get to see these rates for what they are, and after a few months, you'll get to hang out with these dudes, and then you want to be a corpsman. You go down to medical bay, and so I was like, that's cool. I get to check it out before I commit. Wrong, dude. I get to the fleet, undesignated deck seaman, which anyone that knows anything about the Navy is just straight up slave labor for the bosun mates. So I was on a floating prison called the Uss Shiloh for a couple years, and it was humbling. It was culture shock. I never really traveled before.
The Shiloh?
USS Shiloh.
What kind of ship was it?
It was an Aegis cruiser, and I guess it was named after the Battle of Shiloh, some Civil War battle. So it was a missile boat. So what we did is we were plane guard. We would cruise about 1,000 yards behind the aircraft carrier, which was the Carl Vinson. We were part of the Carl Vinson battle group. So our job was to protect the carrier because it's very vulnerable. It's got these cool airplanes that sit on it, but when those airplanes are not flying around destroying stuff.
Fucking cheers.
Cheers. We gave ourselves away. What was that? I don't know.
So basically, like unless there's planes doing, for those of you that aren't watching the YouTube video, we just cracked a couple of beers and cheersed it out. So if you want the full story, check it out on YouTube, and you'll see that multitask like a couple of fucking heroes. But anyway,
yeah, walking and chewing bubble gum. We're smart.
Yeah. But,
so yeah, it was good. Again, being from a small town in Colorado, I traveled to like California and New York in the summers to visit family, but I never really been anywhere. So the fleet, I went straight on a Westpac right out the gates. So we hit like Japan and all these other Hong Kong and stuff. So that part was awesome. But being undesignated, I mean, you're bottom of the bottom, dude. I mean, oh.
Yeah, it's funny because, going through BUD/S, like, again, I didn't have that fleet experience. I did on my first platoon when I was in an amphibious readiness group Alpha, ARG Alpha, where we did a bunch of fleet exercises on ships. But I remember in BUD/S, like looking out into the Pacific right off the coast of Coronado and seeing these big fucking ships. And to me, even having not been on one, I was like, God damn, I don't ever want to go on one.
You just know it's a bad thing. Exactly.
But that's a motivator. I'm curious, like when you going through BUD/S, are you looking like, I'm not fucking going back there?
And I kind of knew that ahead of time. We're talking about the mindset portion. So I hated the fleet. I always knew, and my little mantra in my head was, every bad day in the fleet's going to be a good day in BUD/S. Mm-hmm. I knew it. In fact, I kept a journal. Even when I went through BUD/S, did I email you that journal? Mm-mm. It's funny as shit just to see some of the stuff.
Yeah.
So I did that just to kind of keep my sanity on my first Westpac in the fleet. I kept a journal, and I just kept reinforcing that, hey, this is going to pay off someday, and that was my thing. Every bad day in the fleet's going to be a good day in BUD/S. Yeah. So I suck up this 6-month deployment. We went in the Gulf and just did Gulf shit. I mean, it was fairly eventful. We lobbed some tomahawks into Iraq. My bosun mate knew that I wanted to go to BUD/S, so he put me on the VBSS team. Yeah. Because at that time, they were enforcing UN sanctions.
And that's VBSS is Visit Board Search and Seizure, which is kind of like modern day pirates, really. I mean, it's, whether it's Navy or Coast Guard, most ships have these VBSS teams that mount up and they take small boats and go take other boats or ships down, like some pirates. And we do a lot of that in the SEAL teams, but continue.
So yeah, I did as much as I could in the fleet to somewhat prepare myself. It was pretty tough, but I did. My LPO was supportive, and so he put me on the VBSS team, and also for general quarters, he put me on the 25 millimeter chain gun we had portside and stuff.
Atta girl.
Yeah, so it was fun, man. There was actually a situation. I don't know if I could talk about it, but it happened in the Gulf in '96. There was a dude, they came over the 1MC. We had some SEALs and some Force Recon dudes fly on board. The Kobar Towers had just been blown up in '96. And there was an Air Force barracks. And so all of a sudden we were at general quarters, shit got real. and the SEAL dudes were on board and recon dudes were on board. And so my bosun mate, the BM1, comes to me, goes, dude, this is it. Like, we're going to man the port side 25 millimeter. Our job, we're going to pull up next to this Group 3 cargo ship, and we're going to shoot the pilot house and disable it. And then the SEALs are going to fast rope on and take the ship down. And so the captain gets over the 1MC and says that there's a well-known terrorist that is responsible for the Air Force barracks bombing, the Khobar Towers, and his name is Osama bin Laden. And I was like, that's the first time I heard the name. Whatever, it's just another goofy name at the time. And we stalked this ship for 3 days at general quarters. And I was like, dude, it's going to happen. And we get to light the pilot house up with 25, like just, I was so pumped. So for 3 days, BM1 was cool. He goes, listen, this is how it's going to work. We're going to take shifts because you have loader and shooter. And then you're on you can talk to the bridge and stuff if you're the loader. So he says, I'm not going to pull rank on you. We'll just kind of let this flow in 3-hour shifts. And it ended up being canked. Unfortunately, we stalked this ship for a long time and it never went down. But the SEAL dudes were cool. This is the first time I saw them up close. And there was this dude, oddly enough, it was Team 5 that was on board, and this dude had a big red afro with chops, which is not that uncommon. There's some characters in the teams. And I remember seeing him in the chow line, and I asked him, like, hey, when I get off deployment, my chit's been approved to go to Buds. Do you have any advice for me?
And he was, don't quit.
No, he was a big dude, and he was cool. He just kind of looked at me, this little fucking dude in the chow line, He just looked at me, and he said, hey, little man, if I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
And he was nice about it. And, guys in the regular military could be kind of jerks. There's a lot of, people think, they're rank or whatever. And so I'm not too impressed with fleet sailors, But this dude who, I thought was a rock star was just so cool and nice to me. That one moment he took out of his day to say, if I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
Really resonated with me, and I still try to pay that forward to other people I talk to.
Yeah.
And I ended up at 5, and I looked for that dude my entire time. They're like, dude, where's that red afro dude? I want to tell him, bro, I made it. Remember that little skinny kid in the chow line? That's me, bro. I never found that dude, man. So if he's out there, red afro dude, I love you, man.
I'm assuming then you didn't know anybody that knew him. Like, you never found out who it was.
No, I did. I asked around, and dude, I don't know. Maybe he was a ghost or something. But
fucking ghost ninja of SEAL Team 5.
But he was so cool, man. So that was kind of my first real experience with the community, and very impressed at how mellow and cool.
Yeah.
Which to me is kind of my experience. Like, most team guys are comfortable in their own skin, and even when I was a team guy, I did an ARG platoon as well, and I took my time to talk to people and just be a normal dude. And especially coming from the fleet, I was not better than anybody. Some guys might have that attitude, but I kind of learn from his example to just be yourself, dude.
Well, I think pick any community if you're representing it, and you're the minority amongst another big group of people where you're kind of that representation. I think everybody's well served to do your damnedest to represent that community as positively as possible, and not walk around like an asshole with a chip on your shoulder, trying to feel like you're better than everybody. And there's some groups that are worse about that than others that we'll save for maybe another episode, but maybe we'll get one of them on here and bust their fucking balls about it. But yeah, no, it's neat to hear, both the positive impact that I got. To me, it's what's neat about that. It speaks volumes of just humanity in general. Is that whether it's paying it forward or just doing one thing that's polite or nice, a day, like how big of an impact that can have on somebody.
Change some dude's life. You don't know.
Yeah, I mean, think about how long ago was that?
Oh shit, dude, that was
over 20 years, right?
Yeah, 96.
Yeah. So 22 years ago, and that not only is still very fresh in your mind, but it had a very, very prominent impact on your service moving forward. So to me, again, it's a neat element, I think, of of humanity and how important things like that are. So anybody out there listening, I don't care if it's somebody at fucking Walmart or whatever, if you can help somebody out and and make their day better, do it, because I mean it'll have a bigger impact than you think a lot of times.
Exactly. Well, and also realize that it can have the opposite effect.
Sure.
If you're a jerk to somebody, it could,
Yeah.
you never know where someone's at.
Yeah,
Or,
I mean, somebody's on the fucking ledge one day, and you push them over by being a total prick. Like, so always look for the good. I mean, doesn't cost anything to be polite. Of course, it doesn't cost anything to be an asshole either. But
that's true. That's true.
But it might. It may cost you your teeth if you're an asshole to the wrong guy.
Dude. Yeah, man,
but,
that's right.
So you got your chit approved, your application basically to go to SEAL training. Now here's where you and I meet, which is there's so many good stories. I can't wait to get into this shit. But I was in class 214 first, which is what because you were in 15 the whole time, right?
Yep.
So we didn't actually meet until I classed up with 214. Went all the way to 6 days before San Clemente Island, and I had pinched my sciatic nerve early on in the third phase of training, doing land nav up at Mount Laguna, land navigation.
Oh, shit.
I pinched my sciatic nerve, and then from that day forward, I failed everything. So I ended up, ironically enough, I failed for swims, but I failed everything, and that was just the first thing that I failed 3 of. Got rolled back, healed up, and then jumped in with 215, and that's where you and I met. So we were only in third phase together, but graduated together. But just in that short amount of time that we were together, there's a couple things that stand out. I don't know how well you remember me. probably not that well.
Oh, I do.
I mean, shit. I was 18. I was 18 years old, and I mean, I was a skinny little punk. I mean, I weighed 145 pounds in buds.
I think we all did, man. Have you ever seen someone's buds photo next to their
crazy.
platoon photo? Yeah,
dude, I look like I'm 12 years old. I mean, shit. I was only 6 years older than that, but I mean, I look like a child. But anyway, one of the things that I remember that my first kind of prominent memory of you, you know where I'm going with this, is so we're on a flight out from San Diego to San Clemente Island, which is the last 30 some odd days of training, and they call it the Rock. It's 26 miles long by 2 miles wide. It's about 90 miles off the coast of San Diego. And it's rough, nobody can hear you scream on the Rock and in the island, whatever. But so we're chartering a military
Con
Air flight, a Freudian slip. We're on a flight from San Diego North Island Naval Air Station to San Clemente Island, and we're halfway there. It's a short flight or whatever, and Clark gets up to use the bathroom and comes out. And as soon as you come out of the bathroom, both like fucking Rocky Balboa, like both hands straight up in the air, and like I fucking owned it, which was it's like you fucking rubbed one out in the airplane bathroom by yourself on it. And like looking back, like at the time it's funny, but like looking back on it, I'm like, you sick twisted fuck, Who rubs one out on a plane full of dudes going to San Clemente? But that was the first time I really remember like,
hey, you got to be known for something, bro.
You sticking out as like Jesus Christ.
If your masturbation habits get you known, dude. Well, so that started out early on in Buds. One of our Naval Academy grads told us about a game that they play at the academy. If you jerk off in a place, you own it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, don't put that in my head, So I started playing that game around the Buds compound. The only time I failed is I never owned Hell Week. I owned everything else, everything you could come up with, the surf zone, you name it. I had a little hair trigger. I could get in there and do my business quick. Hell Week, we're going through Hell Week, and I have my moment. We're at the pool doing our thing, and I go to use the bathroom, right? And so I close the shitter door stall. And there were centerfolds put up, and it said "Keep it up, 215." Or the supporting class had put those on. I'm like, oh my god! Not only can I, but I have some inspiration. And so I'm doing my thing, and all of a sudden, this instructor kicks in the door to the bathroom. Who the fuck is in here? And I was so close. I was like, but immediately you're like, nope, couldn't do it. And then, as you know, you get far enough into Hell Week like that, it ain't gonna be possible past like Wednesday. You're done. So I had my moment probably early Tuesday. I was like, I can own Hell Week. Hoey got me, dude. I'm like 17 and 1. The one is Hoey.
Maybe you can go back and go through it again.
No thanks.
Yeah, I remember. So out at San Clemente Island, there's a. It's called that. It's referenced as the Hell Box, which is the instructor cadre has like a lounge area. That's kind of in the middle of the compound or whatever, and that's like it's like the fucking Taj Mahal, like it's a sacred place. You don't fuck with it, and they would have us come in and clean and restock fridges and shit like that. But it was like you were like walking on eggshells, tap dancing around in there, like don't even fucking breathe wrong. And sure as shit, what does Clark do? He fucking owns the Hell Box. Like,
I owned it. Yeah.
You got to be shitting me right now. But
hey, remember the time we were up on the range shooting rifles, and they had the instructor porta potty and the students porta potty? So I was gonna own the instructor's porta potty, and sure as shit, here comes the instructor's truck, and I was like under the pressure, dude. I was like, oh my god, I can see this pickup truck coming up. I'm like, I got this. I did it. I busted out the porta potty, like yeah.
Oh, for fuck's sake. So, for everybody listening, yes, this is a normal conversation. There's really nothing abnormal about this. And it's just, we're all a bunch of filthy fucks sometimes in a lot of different ways. But so we graduated 215 together. And for me, it was a little bit bittersweet because, for me, that wasn't the class I started with. I always wished I'd graduated with 14, but shit happens. It is what it is. But so we graduated at 215. Is there any other stories from Buds that kind of stick out in your mind as being like, something that shaped who you are or that stick out as being like, a prominent moment in your life that really stands out? Yeah.
Well, obviously the introduction to the brotherhood.
Yeah.
Especially the further you get, the more you bond, and they kind of try to teach you early on, don't make friends with dudes because they might go away, but once you get into second phase, third phase, you're kind of in your rhythm and you start to bond. So that was my first introduction to the brotherhood, which I fell in love with. But I really admired, remember Instructor Ryan, our third phase proctor. He was an animal.
Phil Ryan, I'll tell you what.
He would kick us out of bed at 3 a.m. on the island and PT us for like 3 hours. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, that dude was a monster.
Or, we did runs through Balboa Park with the dude. Yeah. He was just an animal. And he always would have his ghetto blaster cranking some crazy Tool or Metallica. Yeah. And it was just, like, he was so motivating, dude. So he always stood out as... my second phase proctor he was going through a divorce, and so he took his divorce out on us.
Yeah, was it Bablik?
No, I wish. I made friends with that dude in Thailand, man. We'll get to the Bablik story, but I bumped into him. I digress, but I bumped into him in Iraq, and then we became friends in Thailand. He's actually a nice dude.
Yeah, no, he's a great guy.
As an instructor, I was terrified of him. Was it Weber?
Well, at any rate.
Yeah. So anyway, he was going through a divorce, and so. Second phase was miserable. He took it out on us. Yeah. So by the time we got to third phase and we had Phil, I was just so motivated by his energy, dude. He'd always blast metal, and we'd PT for like, it was supposed to be an hour, but it was 3 hours. And so he always stood out as like, dude, that's fucking awesome.
So quick story. I don't know if you remember, quick story about Instructor Ryan. And if, I doubt that he's listening, but if he is, that dude has to understand like the fucking impact he had on an entire generation of frogmen. Like, you talk about a dude to emulate. Maddest fucking respect for that instructor. Like, just,
big time.
Holy shit. But I was only 18 at the time, but there was the kickoff, the graduation party at Danny's, which went till like 4 in the fucking morning, and he was plowed. Absolutely fucking hammered. And I remember my parents were in town. Shout out to George and Sandy again. Love my parents. I always try to mention them when I can. But
sorry, Mom and Dad.
Yeah, so they were in town for graduation. It was the last night. We went out. Like, everybody got fucking hammered. I didn't. The one thing good on Danny's, like, they were careful about that. But I was at least able to be there and share in that experience with the class. But Instructor Ryan was fucking hammered. Absolutely hammered. Like, past, like, I think when we left, like, he was literally in the crooks of his elbows on the bar, like, passed the fuck out at like 3:30.
He could hit it hard.
And so the next morning, like, my parents in a fucking rental car are driving me on to base, to go. We had our last PT of Buds. And, Ryan was our proctor, so he was leading it. 3 hours later, this dude is on a fucking bicycle with a fucking cigarette hanging out of his mouth, hauling ass.
Yeah.
Just tooling along, smoking a cig, like hauling ass, riding his bike to work, and then just murdered us on our last PT. Like, absolutely fucking crushed everybody's
He's
spirit.
a machine, dude.
Yeah, I mean, he's like a fucking Terminator. He's like a robot. But, I mean, like that generation of instructors then, like when we were going through, I mean, like there's so many of them. I mean, fucking Getka and Knowles and Sholand, and I mean, all just, I mean, most of the people aren't going to recognize those names, but to me, and I know Clark and our generation of, the late 90s, early 2000s, kind of the right before 9/11 frogman generation, the instructors that we had at that time, I mean, God damn it, those guys, you talk about, people to emulate, and just,
top notch
people that inspired a generation of naval special warfare guys to fucking walk it, I mean, really just... I can't say enough good things about them. I mean, and they all had their own personalities. They all had their own character traits.
Yeah.
And they were all just absolute fucking badasses and are the reason, the guys that came before them inspired them and vice versa. And I truly believe like that's why the SEAL teams has both the success and the reputation that they have is because of the guys like that carry that torch and put guys through buds and walk it and lead the PTs and fucking show them how to be, battle hardened, barrel chested fucking freedom fighter, pipe hitter frogmen, and it's a lot of good memories.
Well, you got to keep that sword sharp even between wars.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We weren't coming off the tail end of Vietnam, or we weren't post 9/11 dudes.
Yeah.
You're maintaining that high level of skill set in between. There's always little things here and there dudes get into, but the standards that community maintains at all times is unparalleled. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, no, it really is. As we stroke our own egos here.
Right? Right?
Move into Fort Benning. So we went to jump school together, which that was a fucking clown show, but I won't spend too much time on that. But God, what a fucking fish out of water experience that was, I know, for most of us.
It was culture shock, dude.
Yeah, unfortunately, they don't. Back then, when you graduate BUD/S, you'd go to Fort Benning, Georgia, to the Army's airborne jump school for 3 weeks and go through their traditional jump school. They don't do that anymore, and I would say, unfortunately, to me, it is an important element, like both from tradition standpoint and just understanding the Army mentality a little bit, because you're going to work with them.
Yep.
I do look back on that, and it sucked at the time, but was a good experience. It's not the most efficient or economical one, but at any rate, so we go through Fort Benning together, and then I went to SEAL Team 3, and you went to SEAL Team 5, and you were there for a number of years. Tell me two things. We'll start off with your first day at Team 5, which I know is a good story, but also just kind of encompassing your time there and what impact that had on you.
Yeah, dude, I loved it. So I had a little bit of a heads up of the personality of 5. When I was in the fleet, my neighbor in my apartment complex was a sniper at 5. So he kind of gave me the lowdown of the personalities and this and that. And I don't know if you remember, but running to Bud's Chow, there was something special behind that chain link fence at 5. It just got a little more weird, and the fence was shaking a little more. Like, it was almost like, what, are there inmates behind that?
A fucking zoo.
5's a little wild. So I kind of, my first instinct, and I don't really kick myself for it, but my first instinct was 3. Mm-hmm. Because at that time, who's more likely to get into the shit? Well, they go to the Middle East. So, damn, there you go. But my neighbor had kind of put some things in my head about 5, and I'm like, I don't know, the pirate squad, they're kind of nasty. Like, I don't know what's going on over there. The curiosity factor got the best of me. So I ended up going to 5, and as you know, you get done with airborne school, and you show up as a little dapper new guy in your little uniform with your manila envelope, and everything's cool, and it's almost like going to BUD/S. It's this whole new world.
So it's like a fucking lamb walking into a goddamn lion's den.
It's 100% what it is. Like you kind of know it too, because you've already had your ass handed to you in BUD/S, but you kind of know that's. As tough as BUD/S is, this is now like where you're going to be. Yeah, this is the real world, man. Yeah. So you show up excited, nervous, and so I show up and all the platoons form up, but in the back of the formation was a forklift, and there's a dude naked hanging.
A recurring theme.
Nudity is Mike and I continue will reoccur a lot. There's a lot of nudity, maybe even some now, but that'll be on YouTube.
You can't see under the desk.
Yeah,
Probably
right.
Good.
So this dude is forklifts up, dude's hanging down, upside down. He's beehived in duct tape in certain areas. And then there's a sign hanging off of him that says, "Doesn't want to drink with my buddies." So I'm like, oh shit. And now I'm already like, now I'm super nervous. And no one's paying attention to this poor dude. To this day, I still don't know who that was. I didn't want to know. And so I'm in, the what is it, like the master at arms formation or whatever is kind of at the end where everyone's kind of there. You don't have a purpose quite yet. And I just keep looking over my shoulder like, is this dude okay? Like his face is getting red. Like no one gives a shit. So then they do the typical, hey, I think we got a new guy here. Where are you at? And I just kind of like, I don't know what to do. I raise my hand like I'm in class or something. And they're like, come on up. So I go up to the formation, and of course the CO is super nice. Like, hey, how you doing? And whatever, everything's cool. Why don't you just tell us where you're from? Turn around and tell everybody where you're from. And it's kind of like the typical stereotype, As soon as you speak, everyone yells, "Shut the fuck up!" And you're just like, holy shit. There was no spoiler alert. Like I didn't see the movie before this experience. When you and I were in, there was no info. And I had
behind the curtain.
No heads up on this shit. So of course you just feel like a total fucking retard. So formation's over, and they're like, "Hey, go to the master at arms shack and get a locker." So I go into this locker room area, and there's another naked dude duct taped to a bench. And there's two dudes beating him with swim fins. And I'm just like, oh, shit. So I find my locker number, and I'm nervously throwing my shit in the locker. So as they're beating this dude with swim fins, this guy has a big padlock that comes off the Connex box. And he takes his cock and balls, puts the padlock around it, and he goes, "Give me your wife's cell phone number. I'll call it with the combination." And dude, it was at that point I had half a foot out the door, dude. I ran out of the locker room, and I went to the other side of the building, and I just thought, what the fuck did I just get into? I guess it's like your first day in prison. You know what I mean? I was just
new meat, fucking whitefish.
Oh,
Jesus Christ.
I was like, holy shit. Shit got real, man. So... You know the deal. You've been through the same stuff, so it was a very memorable first day.
Yeah, welcome to the club, huh? God. To me, for all those listening that are accountants or they do normal shit. One of the things that makes special operations and obviously specifically the SEAL teams kind of what they are is honestly shit like that. And we were talking about a little bit earlier about, the emasculation and pussification of our society and just how weak we've become between political correctness and technology and not being held accountable for your fucking mouth. To me, if I had to pinpoint, one thing that kind of really encompasses the shitstorm that our country has been turning into over the last few decades, is that there's a lot of other factors, but when it really boils down to it, it's like people aren't being held accountable. It's like, well, I'm either a victim or I can point the finger or I can make an excuse and it's okay and I get coddled. And one of the things that I just fucking love about not just the military, obviously, the military broad spectrum is that way, but especially special operations because it's at a level where the most minute fuck up, can be your or several people's lives, and so the tolerance for bullshit and excuses and a lack of accountability is fucking zero, and having those experiences, we laugh about seeing that type, all of those things are done for a reason, is that if you're not towing the fucking company line and doing what and this isn't even going above and beyond. This is the bare minimum. Now, granted, the bare minimum is fucking high, but if you're not achieving the bare minimum, you're going to pay the fucking man. And I see it. One of the things I was actually just talking with it earlier today, with my kids about short stroking physical activity during a CrossFit workout. Is that one of them? Ran just a couple of feet over the grass, instead of going around a cone, cheated basically, and the response is, I'm not going to, as a coach is well, I'm not going to say anything. I don't want to call them out. I don't want to embarrass them. Right. And I'm thinking to myself, I wish that I had been the coach at that time. Cause I'll tell you right now, I'd been you motherfucker, go stand in the corner sucking your thumb, and you're going to watch the entire group, and I'm going to say, hey, everybody thank her.
Yeah.
We're all going to do it again. I'm going to make the whole class do it again while they stand there and watch. I mean, Full Metal Jacket style.
Yeah,
right?
eat your jelly donut.
Yeah, you can stand there and you can watch everybody else pay for your fucking mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how many times do you think they're going to do that again? Never.
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't exist in our society, you know, and, you know, for people, well, it's not how the real world works. Motherfucker, I'll tell you right now, it should.
Yeah.
Like, it honestly should, because that fixes problems. People don't have attitudes. You know, they don't fuck up. When they do fuck up, they're held accountable for it, and they remember it. And that shit doesn't happen again when you hold people accountable, you know, and holding them accountable, obviously there's a lot of different ways to do it. You know, that's for another episode. We'll bring Dr. Jordan Peterson on here and get the psychoanalysis about it. But to me, like, that, you know, militaries have been using that style of, you know, of repercussion training for thousands of years, you know, and in a society now where we don't do that, like, you see where that manifests into a bunch of other fucking problems where, you know, people just, they're not held accountable, and it's a big fucking problem. So I wish that our society was a little more flexible on reprimanding each other and, you know, stuff like that. Like, again, it's funny to hear about it, and you're like, holy shit, looking around.
Yeah.
But think about the mentality you had showing up. You're like, dude, I'm not fucking up while I'm here. Like,
well, you realize your actions affect other people.
Mm-hmm.
When other people pay the price for your mistake, which we didn't maybe know at the time, but when you go to war and you fuck up, like you said, people get hurt or killed.
Yeah.
So at that smaller level, you realize when you fuck up, other people are affected by it. And so that's what that teaches. And like you said, you do that once and you'll never do it again, because there's an embarrassment factor with it. Like, oh shit, I just caused the whole class or the whole platoon or whoever to go through some misery because of my mistake. Yeah. So now you're extra on guard to not make that mistake again, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, there needs to be way more of that. So if you're the CEO of a company listening to this, run that shit up the flagpole and make it fucking happen.
Or you can hire me and Mike as your HR dudes, and we'll square them away.
Fucking HR dudes, I love it. That'll be on the business card. HR dude.
Call us, we'll fuck you up.
Tighten your shit up, one paddling at a time. Christ. All right, so you spent several years there. You did you do one deployment, two deployments?
I did one deployment. Yeah, we did an ARC platoon.
What? Yeah, I mean, I'll save the lingo and the terminology. Basically, back then, my first platoon and Clark's first platoon were very similar in that way, in that we're forward based on ships. Mm-hmm. Which for me, having not come from the fleet, like, that gave me a pretty good, healthy insight into the fleet Navy, and made me, further appreciate my my willingness to see, Bud's training all the way through fruition. But so you got out in 2001, right?
Yep.
And so, is there anything that you can share from that deployment that or that experience at Team 5, other than kind of the textbook principles that we were talking about in terms of being surrounded by, the type of guys you want to emulate and things of that nature? But what kind of stands out from you from being at SEAL Team 5 for a full cycle deployment and for several years?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, obviously the workup is the hard part of that cycle that we go through. I really enjoyed that. The deployment was good. At least I had one deployment in the fleet under my belt, so it wasn't culture shock to me. Yeah. So I had been overseas. I had been in some places. I appreciated the lifestyle adjustment. Obviously, a deployment in the fleet compared to, we stayed at a pretty nice joint in Thailand on the beach, little bungalows, and we would have our muster at noon with a beer in the pool, as opposed to, covered.
As opposed to chipping fucking paint off the wall. And
covered in gray paint at 7 a.m. And, so it really was that contrast of the lifestyles and stuff. And I did enjoy being on a ship as a team guy. It's a much different experience. Yeah. Then, you got that trident on your flight suit. You can kind of walk where you want, as opposed to little Clarky the deck seaman covered in gray. Hey, get out of here, cabin boy, shoot away. And And then, we hit some different spots than I had been to before, so I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So it was good. It was good. We bounced around quite a bit. We did a couple things that were fun and interesting. I mean, considering the time frame it was pre 9/11, so not a lot going on, but we were busy. It was active.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it. I loved it, man. It was good, man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. I mean, that my first deployment pre 9/11 too, and similarly, being on a ship, I had similar sentiments. But I'm curious. So, once you actually got out and were making the transition out into the civilian world, I mean, that's when you moved to Thailand, for a little while. I mean.
Yep.
Christ, I got to hear about that. Like, I mean, we for those listening, Thailand, and especially for the Navy, but even in some other aspects of the military, like Thailand is like the Las Vegas of the world for the military, or for the Navy at least. Is that like it's just crazy shit that happens there, And so, to me, anybody, whether it's you or Babs or whoever, it's like, I moved to Thailand. I'm like, this fucking dirty bastard.
That's right.
Like, so naturally, I got to hear like, what drove you, other than maybe the obvious, to move to Thailand? Like, tell me, what the fuck was that all about?
Yeah, dude, Thailand's kind of the Wild West. So basically, after my deployment with 5, divorce initiated. Which is not uncommon in the military. Teams are no exception.
Yeah.
And that really was the toughest time to this day in my life. Especially the divorce was just brutal. We had 2 kids. This was the same girl I'd been with for 9 years from college. And so, I mean, finances ruined. Things were really tough. That started some static with me and my upper chain of command at the team, and that's ultimately why I got out. So for me, Thailand was just kind of a getaway from all that. I just wanted to go over there for a little bit. I did a little bit more of the hippie route. I was more of a beach bum. I still had fun with the nightlife and, the
what do you mean?
The shiny lights, the establishments that are there. But I found some peace in the nature there. One, the Thai culture is awesome. They're super mellow people. They're just these little peaceful Buddhist people. They call it the land of smiles. They're just happy, dude. And so I was coming from, I had a divorce in my personal life. I had somewhat of a divorce from Team 5. I was battling my command master chief at the time. So for me, it was just I just want to be a bum on a beach, dude.
Yeah.
I had a little ocean kayak. I'd paddle out and just kind of cruise up the shoreline. So it was...
Where were you at in Thailand?
A little place called Jomtien, which is just outside of Pattaya, which is nuts. So it was kind of like being in the suburb just outside of Vegas. I could dip into the craziness and then I could fade away to the beach life.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to get around. You can hop on a boat or an airplane and be on some island for a few days and stuff. So it was super cool. Enjoyed the people. Not a fan of the food so much.
No shit. I love Thai food.
Thai food's good, man, but never trust a fart in Thailand, man. You know what I mean? It's just, I always had that that stomach issue over there. So, but yeah, man, it was just, I love that island lifestyle, man. So it was cool. I got out of the teams about 5 months before 9/11.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I wasn't issued a crystal ball.
Yeah.
I saw 9/11 go down when I was in Thailand, and I'm like, God, are you kidding me, man? I mean, it was just so horrible to be away from your country when that happens. It was like, I got to get back somehow. I don't know what I'm going to do. Yeah. I was still pretty bitter with my experience with my command master chief, so I ended up coming back home and talking to some buddies of mine. They introduced me to the concept of 19th Group, a Reserve Special Forces unit. They have 19th Group and 20th Group. So,
and that's out of Watkins, Colorado?
Watkins, Colorado, just outside of Denver. And that's close to Colorado Springs. At that time, the teams didn't really have an active reserve component. They had like OST-1. Basically, I guess you build pallets for platoons or something. It wasn't anything
logistics assholes.
Yeah, it was like, no, that's okay. So I was kind of looking at easing back into it. Obviously, I wanted to be a part of the cause because 9/11 just sucked for everybody.
Yeah.
So I heard about this reserve SS stuff, and I'm like, wow, that's cool. And if it ends up being cool, I'm sure I could snake my way into active duty. Mm-hmm. And what an experience that would be to be both blue and green in special operations, like me as a like the growth that would occur.
Yeah. And for those listening, blue, Navy, green, Army.
Yep.
19th Group Special Forces. Special Forces is specific to the Army. That's one of the common, I think, mistakes that both media and civilian folks make is they say special forces as opposed to special operations. Special forces is Green Berets, but so this is a reserve Green Beret or special forces group out of Watkins, Colorado that he joined up with. But
yeah, and they're pretty good dudes. I got introduced to SF dudes when I was in Okie. They got some first group dudes out of there, so I was hanging out with some of their SIF dudes and stuff. And so I didn't speak Green Beret fluently, and I still don't. Yeah. But my introduction to them was SIF dudes. Yeah. They're pretty badass. However, when I got to Fort Bragg, I realized it's a large community, and not everyone is a door kicker. I was like, oh, shit. Yeah. No disrespect to my SF brothers, but... the SIF guys are a little more intense than the
logistics dudes,
the other Green Berets, and so yeah. I mean, I had a good taste in my mouth about these SF dudes. The dudes at Watkins were awesome dudes, man. They put you in a rec company, getting you ready for selection and stuff. But because of my prior background, they even waived selection, which I was nervous about because I said, "Look, I appreciate that, but I'm not asking for favors and we've had dudes come to Buds from SF." You got to go one day. You got to go back to kindergarten with everybody else.
Yeah, you got to prove your shit.
I don't want favors. I don't want to show up to brag with this little piece of paper. Hey, and then
people are like, fuck this guy.
Well, and that's exactly what happened.
Fuck this guy.
Well, so it was kind of like I was trapped between mom and dad fighting. So the unit, they were like, no, bro, you're a fully qualified dude. Like, really, you should go through MOS and language and, whatever. Robin Sage and get out or whatever. They had an abbreviated format for me in mind when I got to Fort Bragg.
They're like, fuck you.
They were like, who the fuck are you? And what was funny is a lot of the students didn't know what the Trident was because at that time they had the 18 X-ray program. So they had these little SF babies. And so literally we're in formation and I'm like, so what'd you do before this? And like, oh, I worked at Arby's. And I was like, holy shit, dude.
For real you did?
Yeah. I mean, I was... late 20. I was probably almost 30 at the time. Yeah. And so they would say, oh, what's that on your uniform? And I'm like, oh, I can play with this shit, dude. So I'd be like, well, I was in the Navy. What'd you do in the Navy? Oh, I was a naval astronaut. And they would just be like, dude. But then the instructors would come around in formation and they would stop and they'd be like, what the fuck are you doing here? And I'm like, man, I don't know, dude. One of my favorite memories was one of our entrance tests was to swim 50 meters in boots and utes. Yeah. And so they line you up alphabetically. Go ahead.
It's boots and utilities, like in camouflage, like full pants and
in your boots
and tops. But go ahead.
So we're lined up alphabetically. So Impastato, I'm in the middle, and I'm just hanging out. And so finally, I get to the edge of the pool, and this dude in fins and a mask looks up at me and he goes, "Are you fucking with me, bro?" He goes, "I'm pretty sure you can swim 50 meters." Yeah. So it was cool. I jump in the pool and I swim 25 out and 25 back. And so it was kind of a funny, some of the instructors thought it was funny and some didn't. So what happened was I never got into a phase of training. I would report to the National Guard liaison because they brought me straight across as an E5. So I was a sergeant. Well, my TAC, I was going in as an 18 Charlie, which is a demo guy. And my TAC was like, well, how are you already an E5 in the Army? And I said, well, they brought me straight across. They tried to bump me down a couple of ranks, but I told them I'm not coming in as an E3. Like I earned my E5. I have a family. I have some pay concerns. And so they did some paperwork. I came straight across as a sergeant. Well, that doesn't fly in the Army. Yeah. They have their PLDC leadership course. So they're like, well, hold on, bro. You didn't go through selection. You didn't go through PLDC. Like, you're here for SUT, small unit tactics, second phase. And I'm like, bro, I'm just doing what the piece of paper says. Like, I'm willing to do anything you want. Yeah. So what I learned about their SF process, the Q course, is it's not really a pipeline like ours is. They'll send a dude out for selection, and then he goes home for a couple months. And then he'll come out for second phase, go home for a couple months. It's very modular in that you can do it in bits and pieces.
So it's not total immersion ball kicking like we had to go through. Yeah.
It's phase by phase. And so then they were like, well, maybe, he's got SEER school, but it's not Army SEER school. So let's send him to SEER school. So I literally would report to the National Guard liaison and say, did I get a phase of training today? No. So I'd go home. So I sat there at Fort Bragg frustrated, willing to do anything, not asking for favors. So I had a buddy of mine that was at Namnick at the time, and I would call him up with my frustrations. So he said, "Hey, bro, one of our other buddies, I don't want to throw out too many names out there because I don't know where they're at or what they're doing, but he goes, hey, this dude's working for DynCorp. He's on Car's Eyes Protection Detail, and he's making like 10, 12 grand a month." I'm like, what? Is that some Soldier of Fortune bullshit? Or like, what? I mean, what's going on, man? Yeah. So I got in touch with that dude. He goes, oh, bro, this is like being in a platoon again, but you're getting like admiral's pay, dude. It's crazy. I'm like, is this for real? Because I might be able to get out of this because I haven't been quite plugged in yet. You know what I mean? So sure as shit, he gave me the recruiter for DynCorp. And so I emailed him my situation. I said, look, I'm currently stationed at Fort Bragg, but I'm really not doing much. You know, I check in with the liaison dude and see you tomorrow. Yeah. Which isn't a bad gig unless you want to accomplish something. You know what I mean? So the DynCorp guy goes, hey, this isn't the first time we've come across this. What we can do is we can put you IRR, and then you can just deploy with the State Department. And I'm like, hey, if you can make that happen. And so my unit back in Colorado they felt bad for me. I mean, they knew what was going on. Like I said, it was this war between Colorado and Fort Bragg of, hey, just get this dude qualified and get him back here. Yeah. The unit itself treated me very well, like a brother. Yeah. Had a blast with those dudes, a lot of respect. Most of those dudes are former active duty guys with a ton of experience. And sometimes they get deployed more than the active duty guys. It's weird how that works with 19th and 20th Group. Yeah. So luckily, as a favor to me, they put me IR, and I was released to the State Department with DynCorp. Yeah. And then I bounced out to Virginia for a selection process, and that was my introduction to contracting in 2003, which it is, at that time, a fairly new concept, you know?
Sure. Before we get into that, one thing I'm curious of, and I think a lot of people would be, is that, making that transfer of being, an active duty SEAL for a number of years and then getting out and then transferring back into an Army SF reserve group, like how, just real quick, if you could kind of synopsize, like, how's that even fucking possible?
Dude, it's, as far as like mentally possible?
No. Well, I know it's fucking mentally possible. Like how, I guess logistically, like you just, I mean, like what does that process entail?
Oh, it's easy. You just go to the National Guard recruiter and you say, hey, this is who I am. I've heard about this unit.
And they'll bring you straight into a fucking Green Beret reserve unit.
Yeah, no shit. Absolutely. They were just like, yeah, bro, this is easy day, man. Sign here.
And then they qualify and
so I reported to the unit. They're like, hey, this is the nearest 19th Group unit out of Watkins. And so I'd make you do the weekend warrior thing, 1 weekend a month. Kind of like I was like Pauly Shore in the Army now.
It's funny you mentioned Pauly Shore because goddamn, you sound just like him.
Right, dude? I love that guy, dude.
You fucking sound exactly like his dad.
So that's how it was. It was actually a pretty simple process. Yeah. So because of my contacts with the first group SIF dudes, I was able to get the proper information, basically, to go to this recruiter and say, hey, I've heard about this 19th Group thing. Yeah. What's the deal with it? And so they made it all happen. And dude, it was flawless. It was super easy, man.
Damn, that's pretty wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Mentally, it was different, though. It's, I felt like a foreign exchange student because they have their own language. Yeah. So they'd be like, hey, grab your 201 files. And I'm like, what the fuck's a 201 file? Like, oh, it's your service record. I'm like, can't they just say service fucking, So I was constantly like nudging dudes like, hey, what are we doing? It was kind of like airborne. Like we really didn't know what was going on. We just kind of did it. Yeah. That was my experience at Bragg. But the problem there was too, is I was friends with a lot of the SF dudes I had worked with before. Yeah. And so we'd, partake in some festivities on the weekends. And so I was kind of like part student, part bro, it was fun.
Mixing the fraternization.
Mm-hmm.
That's good shit. All right. So you transfer from, you're in Thailand, 9/11 happens. You're like, holy fuck, I got to get back stateside. You roll into 19th Group, and then now you get the offer to, do contracting work. Now, for those listening, like the contracting, timeline was pretty interesting in that, from 9/11 to 2003, there wasn't really hardly any activity with it. It wasn't until Iraq kicked off. And really, once the whole ground invasion was done, early part of 2003, which is when, that was my time there, was, that conventional force aspect of it, which, was neat in and of its own right of being witness to and part of that. But that didn't take very long. Like once all of the especially the 1st Marine Division had swept all the way up through into Crete where we were at with them and took the palace down and all that shit. At that point it was kind of like, okay, well the country's taken over. Fucking now what? And I remember not long after I left there, that's when contracting started to pick up, and then it just increased, steadily over and over. And one of the things, again, kind of the premise of this interview and this episode is that experience, the contracting side of special operators. Once they get out and they're like, fuck it, I'm going to go make, $1,200, $1,500 a day, $2,000 if they're, supervisor, whatever, program manager, shit like that. Like, they're going to go make more money, but there's elements of it that are very, very similar, but there's some that are pretty fucking contrasted, and so I'm real anxious and excited to get into this portion of the interview where, kind of hearing your experiences with the contracting side, because, I have a ton of really good friends, some of which have been killed doing contracting, but that have worked for Dynacore and Triple Canopy and Blackwater and MBM and, all these other companies that have done the contracting thing. And so, I know that you worked for several different ones. The first one was Dynacore, but once you got that State Department offer and were put in a position to where you could go do the selection, walk me through just kind of that process of transferring over into working for a contracting company and what that looks like.
Yeah, definitely. I've always kind of had that Forrest Gump kind of luck. I was beating my head against the wall with this SF process. Couldn't get that off the runway, and so just through my conversations with brothers, this opportunity presented itself. Had no idea what I was getting into, just off the good word of some bros. So I went off to Virginia for a selection process. The early days of contracting were pretty pure. You had to have pretty much a soft background. So it was a lot of CAG dudes, SF dudes, and team guys.
That's Delta and...
Yep.
For those not familiar, CAG and Delta are interchangeable, but go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So the selection process was nothing really to speak of at that time because it had been around for a short time, but it had just grown a bit to where they had kind of a senior cadre that just needed some good dudes to get boots on the ground initially. So the selection process was pretty much just to make sure you were good to go. Mm-hmm. They had some shooting courses and stuff, and it was fairly basic. They trusted your background quite a bit.
Yeah.
They just verified that you were still current. You weren't some, team guy in the 80s and hadn't done anything in 20 years or whatever. They made sure you were fairly current and you were still proficient. For me, initially, I was supposed to go to the KPD, the Car's Eye Protection Detail. But some things had changed overseas, and so my entire class, we were told the last day that we were going to Israel. So I was like, I was like, I don't even know where that's at on a map. On all this cold weather shit in my hotel room, I could just leave it. Like, okay. I was totally pumped for this Car's Eye thing. And I find myself being whisked away to Israel, and it was weird. Then it turns into kind of this like weird series of events where it was like a Scooby-Doo mystery. So, okay, I think I'm going to Afghanistan, but now I'm going to Israel. This dude picks us up at the airport in Tel Aviv, and don't know who he is. He just lets us know he's with the company, and we all pile in this van. I happen to be riding right front passenger seat, and I'm just like, dude ain't saying a word. He's just driving on this fucking road.
I love it that I'm with the company.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, you're just kind of going with it. Like, this is fucking weird to me, because prior to that, it's all been kind of laid out military stuff where I basically know what's going on. So we get into Jerusalem, and we go to this hotel. We get cell phones, a wad of local currency, and they just pick who we're going to live with. These other rental cars show up. They drive us to these apartments, and they say, we'll see you at 8 a.m.
God damn.
So it's like, it's weird shit, dude. So I'm with, he's now a good friend, but we had just met at that point. And we were roommates, and we have this little apartment in Jerusalem. Don't know where we're at in Jerusalem. Just we know that we're in Jerusalem somewhere. And all of our furniture is boxed up like from IKEA. It's a nice apartment, but it's all in boxes and shit. And we're like, what the fuck do we do? This is so weird. We got till 8 a.m. apparently to figure something out. And as soon as we're trying to sort our shit out, there's a knock at the door. And I'm like, oh, maybe it's dude, Mr.
Company man.
Yeah, company man, dude. And so I peek through the peephole, and it's a dude in some type of uniform with an Uzi. So I'm at my roommate, my buddy. I'm like, dude, come here. And I'm trying to whisper, answer the door. He goes, you fucking answer the door. I'm like, dude, he's got an Uzi. Come on, man. You answer the door. So I'm like, fuck, dude. This is literally, I don't know how long I've been, like maybe 30 minutes in this apartment. So I'm like, fuck, dude, this is not cool, dude. So I open the door, and he's like speaking some language. I don't know, probably Hebrew, or I don't know what it is at this point. And so I don't know what he's saying. So I just said, American. So and then he starts speaking English, and he's basically asking us who the fuck we were.
Yeah.
Like it was on us this quick.
Jesus.
And so we show him our passports, and he ends up kind of fucking off, whatever. So we, as the story unfolded, we kind of got our wits about us. Our apartment was right next door to Ariel Sharon's compound, and that was he's the prime minister of Israel at the time. And that was like his Secret Service going, who the fuck are these weird dudes that just moved in this apartment?
So they didn't the company didn't deconflict that with the host nation?
No, or give us a heads up. Hey, by the way, your apartment is right next to the White House. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
holy shit.
All right, so here I'm gonna delve off into the weeds for a hot minute. Is that for all you conspiracy theory fucks out there that think that the government is capable of pulling off 9/11, like they can't even. No. Like when I hear that shit, like I laugh. I'm like, if you had any idea how fucking incompetent our government actually was, like it's laughable to think that they could pull off something like 9/11. Like honestly, like choke yourself.
Not possible. No way.
Like they can't get themselves out of a wet fucking paper bag 90% of the time. But
you're giving them too much credit when you think they can mastermind.
Like no fucking way. Like 99 out of 100 people would have fucked that up before they even thought about it happening. But anyway.
Yeah, 100%, man. So yeah, dude, I was just in a weird fucking world, man. And we ended up making it work. I think a lot of that in the early days. I think anytime anything is new is the best time to be a part of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because the rules haven't been written. The book hasn't been written. Like it doesn't exist yet. It's in its infancy. And so we just made shit up as we went, dude. So we end up, we tried to find some food that night. And I remember going out of the apartment, and me and my buddy looked right. We looked left, and we're like, fuck, we just went left. We ended up finding a sandwich shop, and here's another dude in a chair with an Uzi pointed at us, and he's like tapping the trigger with his fingers. We walk up. I'm like, this place is nuts, bro. So we end up getting some little sandwich. They pick us up the next day, and they brief us. Yeah, at 8. Yeah, the car pulled up at 8, and we went to the consulate. So the embassies in Tel Aviv, the consulates in Jerusalem. And we still don't know really what's going on. Like, what are we doing here? We all thought we were going to be in Afghanistan. Now we're got Uzis pointed at us. Like, this is fucking weird, man. So we get there, and the detail leader is this older guy with a big scar up his face. And I'm like, dude, what's going on? I mean, these guys look like someone's chewed their bubble gum, dude. These are some
fucking battle-hardened.
Yeah, there's some rough-looking dudes around here. So this dude introduces himself. And in the early days of DynCorp, all of the team leaders and project managers in place were all retired CAG dudes. So they are all just, CAG by nature is just kind of serious entity.
Yeah, no fucking sense of humor.
No, and these guys, I always call them, how do I describe the CAG dudes? Homicidal Harvard grads with zero social skills.
No shit.
That's just kind of how they struck me. This is really the first time I was kind of hanging out with these cats. And I ended up learning the story about his big scar, but basically he kind of tells us what the mission is and what we're going to do, issues us a bunch of legitimate kit and some M4s, and he goes around the table, asks us our background, and he picks 5 of us to be the CAT team, counter assault team, and he goes, square away your gear. You know, our first mission's tomorrow. We're going to Gaza City. And I was like, are we going to like go to the range at all? Does my weapon go bang?
Are we going to sight our shit in?
Yeah.
Like, test fire?
Dude, this is all like normal military thought process. Nope. You had one night to square away your shit. And sure as shit, day 2, we're walking around Gaza City, Gaza. And I'm like,
fucking
what
strapped.
the fuck, dude? Yeah, like
Kitted
this
up
is, you're in Indian country, dude. So it's unlike the military where you you train for forever.
2 fucking years before I ever even
and then you do a deployment. We had 24 hours to square away our kit. And because of our backgrounds, we were put on this team that went, and I was just like, whoa, dude, this is way too fast. Like, holy shit. I'm in G-Town, man. So Gaza was a big part of our early story. We took a lot of small arms fire going through there and stuff. It was 03 was pretty tough times. It was right before they built the walls around some of the Palestinian-held territories. A lot of suicide bombings in Israel proper. So you never got away from it.
Yeah,
we would work in the West Bank or Gaza, and then we'd go back to Jerusalem, and cafes were blowing up, buses were blowing up, dudes were throwing grenades in marketplaces. It was like, what the fuck is this? Like, it was overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I had, only about 8 years military experience total at the time, and I'm dealing with CAG dudes that were like 20, 24 years in.
Yeah.
They would tell stories of the botched Iranian hostage rescue, and I'm like, holy shit, dude, these are some heavy dudes, man. Yeah. We ended up, as any group of guys will, bonding and gelling as time went on. I used to feed them beers and get some little bird stories and stuff, and some of them were in the Somalia scenario. So we became a tight team, but we knew at some point that the SAF attacks were going to turn into something more substantial, and it did.
And SAF is
small arms fire.
Yeah, we got you.
So, dudes would pepper at us with AKs and stuff, but we had level 4 Suburbans and stuff, so it was nothing to be overly concerned of, except for the way I saw it was like, this is like my first real world shit going on. To these CAG dudes, they were probably bored as shit, but I was like, my time in the fleet and the teams was fairly uneventful, especially compared to modern things that have gone on. So my time in Gaza is kind of where I got my cherry broke, and I was kind of stoked about it. These CAG dudes were like, bro,
you fucking pussy,
calm down, bro. I was like, this is shoot at us, So I was kind of pumped. I felt like I checked the box, Yeah. But our 6th week into it, as we knew would happen, unfortunately, a roadside hit one of our motorcades going in. It was another team from Tel Aviv, and it killed 3 of our dudes. So that was the first time I had experienced a loss on our side. And it was, in my opinion, pretty brutal. Like, we had to sanitize their apartments and mail back things and stuff. I had befriended another team guy that was the team leader of the Tel Aviv team. And again, I'm trying to refrain from names because I just don't know who's who and who's related to who or whatever.
No, that's no worries.
But I volunteered to sanitize his apartment, and I kept a shirt that I still have to this day from that. So that was my first experience of kind of when your soul's torn a little bit, when you lose someone close to you,
To me, it's like the stark and grim reality of what you're actually doing,
It was. It was. And being so new to this profession, man, I thought, holy shit, what have I... As dangerous as active duty is, there's still some type of protocol or method to it that I understood, but this was so foreign to me. I thought, like, are we just out here flapping in the wind? Like, obviously, there's no U.S. military presence.
Yeah, there's no
in Israel.
No quick reaction.
There's no QRF. Like, it's you against the world, man. It kind of reminded me of Mad Max Road Warrior. You bust into the Gaza with your motorcade, and it's just you. And the Israelis aren't too stoked that you're there because they're like, what are you doing? Are you hooking up with the pallies? You giving them money or info? So it was... The best way I can describe Israel is we were the dude standing in the middle of a bar fight, not knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, it was chaos for a long time.
Yeah.
So I spent about 2 years there.
God damn.
And I was there. My first pump there was 11 months straight, and that was like you're in it because you live in it.
Yeah.
And then you go out into Indian country and you're in it, and so it was an eye opener for me. It was a growth process as an individual in the industry. Like, holy shit, this is... Luckily, I had the SEAL background, and so I always feel like I was kind of forged in the teams, but then I got sharpened and experienced as a contractor, because to me that was my first real world experience with, like, dude, shit's real. Like, there's people around here that want you dead. This isn't an ARG deployment out of Okinawa. This is Gaza Strip.
Yeah.
So,
it's an interesting component to that, I think, is, you hear, and I think for mainstream America is, it's Afghanistan and Iraq, and there's not a lot of talk or even really recognition or even realization that anything is happening, in Israel or frankly, fucking anywhere. I mean, whether it's, the Green Berets in Africa, or I mean, there's a lot of other shit going on that you either don't hear about or that it's such a small blip on the nation's radar that you don't realize it. But for mainstream America, again, it's important to remember, like, there's a lot of shit going on fucking everywhere.
There's boys everywhere, man.
And it's no less real or dangerous. Bullets are bullets, fucking RPGs are RPGs, car bombs are car bombs, and more importantly, intent is fucking intent. When somebody wants to take your fucking life because you're an American, like, I don't give a shit where you're at. Like, that shit is real. And that's an important component for people to remember, is that, kind of the varsity mentality of Afghanistan and Iraq, because there's, volume-wise such high numbers there, isn't necessarily proportionate to the level of danger or loss or hanging it out there. And I would argue that frankly, in a lot of these other places, because there's such a lack of resources, that you're hanging it out worse. Yeah. Really, because I know, like, again, I never contracted overseas. I did, a very brief stint here stateside as I was transitioning out of the military. But, I had a number of friends, several who have been lost, but doing contracting work. But, the ones that were in Iraq and Afghanistan, which I know we'll get into here in a minute, but, that there's, even though the U.S. military is not technically there to support you, they're at least still there. Yeah. They may not be a phone call away the way they are when you're on active duty, but Christ, there's at least still dudes there that at least give, even if it's a false sense of security, like there's at least, tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands, depending on what time you're there. And in what theater there to fucking help you out. But again, like, to me, that's a kind of a forgotten front. Israel, Gaza Strip, parts of Africa, Horn of Africa. That shit's still pretty gnarly and active, and it doesn't get a whole lot of press. But anyway, so you spent better part of 2 years there. Yeah, I did 5 pumps in and out. God. My first one was 11 months, and then we. Fucking cheers to that. Cheers, brother. We're clinking on that one. So it was good. It was. I learned a lot, man. Contracting for me, it really opened my eyes to. There's obviously before that, it was kind of the NSW way of doing things. Where as a contractor, now I had access to CAG dudes, SF dudes. So I picked their brain, man. It was student time. We'd go to the range. I would study their tactics. We would all run different courses of fire. So to me, the learning curve went through the roof, because it was like, dude, I'm training with guys I never had access to before. And a lot of these dudes were Jedis, 20 plus years. And so I was like, holy shit, I found my Miyagi. I just studied everything they did. And it was the early days of contracting before it got watered down were truly humbling and amazing. Yeah. These individuals that I broke bread with and drank beers with, just I really appreciated that moment. Like, holy shit, I'm really learning a lot about life and about the real world. And it was initially a very, very good experience, man. Yeah. It started out a good thing. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I mean, the little bit of contracting I did, again, it was here stateside, just teaching, some Army guys. Basic, it was 3 days of pistol, 3 days of rifle, like basic marksmanship training, but it was from a tactical standpoint. So it was, the same type of shit that we would do like day one of the range. But but what was neat is that I was with a same type of environment, is that there was 4 of us, and there was me, obviously from a SEAL background. There was a Force Recon guy, a Ranger, and a Green Beret. Oh, nice. Yeah. And so like the 4 of us, and these guys, this was in late 08, like August of 08. So, all these cats had been doing contracting for a few years, and so had some pretty fucking good experience. But then also their culture from their prospective service branch that contributed pretty significantly to the way they did things, and again the tactics. And I did kind of the same thing. As I spent about 4 months working with these guys, and even though it was just basic, 3 days of pistol, 3 days of rifle on a flat range, it was still real eye-opening. And I did very similar things, and then I was like, I'm going to keep my fucking mouth shut, and I'm going to learn from these guys. And I did. Like, that's when I transferred over into wanting to shoot a Glock and And here's the ironic thing, or almost it's almost embarrassing. Like I learned more about shooting working with those guys than I ever did in the SEAL teams. I mean, not that we didn't spend a lot of time shooting, but it was very specific and very one-dimensional in terms of it was all naval special warfare. It was all SEAL team stuff, whereas like working with guys that had different experiences, like I learned a shitload about shooting and became a much better shot because of it. But
definitely.
But yeah, I definitely echo your sentiments there, and it's interesting to hear, that you had a similar experience that way. But
yeah.
So all right, so you did 2 years in and out of Israel and Gaza. From there, what was your path?
I was reassigned to the embassy in Kabul, and so DynCorp. That was kind of the beginning of the. I always call it the new hot chicken town. Blackwater and Triple Canopy popped up. So then it wasn't. Yeah, when it started in its inception. It's what happens when I try to use big words. DynCorp pretty much had everything, but then as these other companies came up, these bidding wars started happening on the embassies. So we actually lost the embassy in Tel Aviv to Triple Canopy, which I was surprised about because I thought, damn, we shed blood for these dudes. Like it was a big deal. Mm-hmm. The package was fine, but the protection detail took a hit. Yeah. So I kind of figured these dudes owed us, like we'll have jobs here forever. And it was actually the opposite. They couldn't wait to get rid of us because of that awkwardness now between our detail and theirs.
No shit.
It was weird. It was opposite of what I thought.
Fucking State Department.
Yeah, right?
Call them out.
I'm telling
you. It's a mic drop. Call them out.
Fuck the State Department. Yeah, honestly, I was totally surprised. I was like, dude, we'll have jobs forever. And then all of a sudden, it's like, hey, Triple got the contract. But in the contracting world, they will offer certain people to step across because you have knowledge of the area, you have your buddies with the Terps, and you've ran these routes 100 times, you know the people at the different venues. And so, but I had been there for so long, I thought, damn, I want something new. And DynCorp still had Afghanistan. So I'm like, yeah, I'll stay with the company. And it's kind of like the teams, you've earned your way up the ranks reputation wise. There's no ranks or anything, which I actually enjoyed about contracting. It was truly, in the early days, kind of a man's game in that it was all first name basis. And it was all like, what do you put on the table now? It wasn't rank based or how many deployments you had, or it was just, this dude's still a performer. He's our guy. He's a workhorse. So I decided to stay with the company because I had been with them for a while and they took care of us. I didn't want to step across and still stay in Israel, even though the accommodations were nice, especially by deployment standards. I mean, it was good. So I went to Afghanistan and I was initially assigned to the embassy protection detail. But one of my buddies was a team leader in another mission, a long range protection mission called Broadsword 1. And they went up in the Panjshir Valley and did some things with some clients. And
nothing vague about that, Clark.
Yeah,
the company and the clients and the customer and
things, and Yeah. So because of that pre-established connection from one of my former dudes that I was in Israel with, he goes, "Yeah, dude, we'll get you off the EPD. We'll do this long range stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah." I mean, I was just new, so I was just happy to still have a job and keep going and whatever. So that was it was interesting. It was very eventful. It was more detailed into certain things, good or bad. I think I lucked out because I was only there for about 4 months and it was the winter time. So warfare in Afghanistan is somewhat seasonal. Because the mountain passes snow over and stuff. Things still happen in Kabul. You get your car bombings, or they had these dudes on scooters with these speaker bombs. They would just put these shape charges with a magnetic speaker on your car and stuff. So we're always worried about dudes on bikes and stuff. So Kabul was semi-active, but where we were was pretty chill. So my time in Afghanistan, I always said it was kind of like a fucked up Colorado. Like Panjshir Valley is actually kind of nice. Except, it smells like mushrooms and everybody wants to kill you. But I enjoyed the experience of it because it was an extra layer to the contract side that I wasn't aware of. So it was interesting but uneventful. So it kind of satisfied just a curiosity factor of, wow, contracting, you open a door and there's 3 more doors and you can open that door and then there's 3 more doors and you can start to climb into some some cubby holes with it. So it was interesting in that aspect. It wasn't as eventful as Israel had been, but it was interesting as shit, man. I remember going up into Panjshir and there's burnout Russian tanks and shit.
Yeah.
I just wanted to scream Wolverines, But I wish I had fucked them up.
Fucking Red Dawn style.
I know.
So I mean, when you were there, I mean, was there an element of still that Russian '80s influence there? Obviously, but I mean, what kind of impact did that have on your guys' operations, if any, or was it just more like almost sightseeing?
No, it was. Our in-brief was pretty down and dirty. These people here aren't scared of you.
Yeah.
They fought the Russians for 10 years. They fought each other for 10 years. Mm-hmm. Every step you take, you better own it like it's American soil.
Yeah.
These fuckers, I don't know where you came from or what you've experienced, but they're not scared of you. You have to own your shit.
Yeah.
So I was like, what the fuck does that mean, dude? And I remember
bend over, I'll show you.
My team leader at the time was this ex-SF dude. And our first venue, we went to meet somebody out in town, and it was funny, man. I was with my buddy. I'll kind of get back to him later on. I call it the trilogy. I was in Israel, Afghanistan, Iraq with the same dude. So I was like, if you have like that typical like battle buddy, like this is my boy, man.
Yeah.
I'll call him J-Lo. Nothing to do with the singer. But anyway, our first night there, they throw us in what they call the jammer car. And it's not electronic jammings. It's this Road Warrior welded big ass bumper fucking car that they just ram cars out of the way. Like this motorcade doesn't fucking stop. Lights and sirens through downtown Kabul, just fucking hitting cars out of the way and shit. I'm like, holy fuck, we're in the backseat of this. Me and J-Lo are looking at each other laughing like, what the fuck, dude? Again, contracting gets weirder.
Yeah.
So we end up at this venue, and the TL puts us out. Me and J-Lo on the street, and he goes, anyone comes up the street, you fucking shoot him, and he walks off. And we're like, looking at each other like, is he serious? Like, we can do this? Like, thank God no one came up the street, because we were like, I don't know. We would have just looked at each other like,
should we shoot him?
Yeah, so the guy would have walked right past us by the time we made our decision. But I was like, this is fucking weird, man. So, I mean, my first few years contracting, it was like a Scooby-Doo mystery. Like, what the fuck do we do next? You know what I mean? It was fucking weird. But eventually I got onto that long-range team with some buddies, and I kind of knew what was going on in the flow of it. And that really was more of kind of a sightseeing thing. You know, we were with people that wanted to meet other people, and we were just there to make sure everything was cool. And so it was uneventful.
Yeah.
And I attribute most of that just to the weather conditions at the time. But it was still fascinating, man. It was still, to me, it was historical. Like, holy fuck, man. I mean, seeing these things and being in the mountains, and we'd link up with some people and stay in their house for a few nights. And so it was kind of the more mellow side of contracting, but it was fucking interesting. It was cool. But the karma of contracting struck again, and the new hot chick in town, Blackwater, showed up.
Yeah.
And they took over the embassy.
Yeah.
So we had a 2-week period where we were going to do ride-alongs with them and kind of show them our routes and this and that. So I'm riding with this Blackwater dude, and somehow the conversation of long sleeves came up, and he goes, yeah, they got a new policy now. If you have tats, you got to wear long sleeves, and you can't have a beard. You got to shave. And I'm like, why the fuck are we contractors, man? Like, I could just sign back up and shave.
Duty and deal with that shit.
I know. So I was like, well, this is kind of stupid. But the deal breaker for me was our compounds were directly outside of the embassy, and we were protected by Nepalese Gurkhas. Well, Blackwater had this great idea that they were going to build a compound right off of Jalalabad Road. And I'm like, that's not a good thing. Like, this is an unprotected site right off a really heavy stretch of road that gets hit a lot, and there's a lot of bad guys out there. So I didn't have a warm and fuzzy about it. So again, I decided to not step across with the new hot chick in town. I decided to stay with DynCorp. So I sat at home for 6 months. In DynCorp, there's always these bidding wars on contracts with these companies. And the big three at that time were Blackwater, Triple Canopy, and DynCorp. But DynCorp was kind of the dying old man, and really Blackwater and Triple Canopy were taking over. So I waited as long as I could. But again, venting my frustrations to the Brotherhood, a project in Iraq had kicked off, and the project managers were Duke Leonard and Dennis Chalker. So I was like, oh, whatever they're into, I'm in, dude, because that's just...
Old school fraud.
Some epic shit.
Yeah.
And so I hopped on board, and that was all word of mouth, man. They wanted all team guys, and it was very cool. And it was funny because Denny was our command master chief at Bud's.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, dude, I get to see that dude again. Like, it's going to be fucking weird. And not to fast forward too much, but my first day in Iraq, I was so excited. I was waiting outside the ready room, and I see Duke and Denny doing their little perimeter patrol around our camp. And Denny breaks off, and I'm like, oh, fuck, dude, he's coming over to me, dude. I'm like the kid that's at the bus stop early, first day of school.
Fucking principal shows up.
Dude, and he comes right over to me, and he just kind of gives me this up and down. And what class did I put you through? I just started laughing. I said, do I still call you Master Chief? I don't know what to call you. And he goes, call me Denny. And he just shook my hand, and I said, 215, Denny. And so that started kind of that whole chapter of it. So, and that was more of a training side type thing.
Yeah.
So that was, it was cool.
But still with Dynacorp.
No, that was USIS, USIS.
Okay. Oh, I got you.
And so we jokingly say, because it was a training mission, that USIS turned into ISIS. USIS turned into ISIS.
Yeah, sure.
I'm pretty sure some of our former students are.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
It was baffling, but I got away from it was a DoD contract, a training mission.
Yeah.
And our mission was to create an Iraqi Tier 1 unit, which is impossible because they're only there because they're related to somebody and they don't want to exercise, and they have ADs all over the place. And so it was a kind of a disaster in a handbasket, but we had access to a lot of good shit because of that budget, man. It was good, man.
So you moved. One question, I guess, that 6-month period that you sat at home, still working for Dynacorp, or still being attached to them, like, were you shit out of luck, or were they paying you at all? Or
No,
just fucking
no. And that's the downside to contracting. When you're not on contract, you don't get shit. So you watch that bank account shrink.
Yeah.
Which is fine for a while, but when nothing's coming in and all this shit's going out, like, the bank account gets small quick. So that's why I started hitting the panic button, and some bros were like, well, hey, I got this if you want to break away from that State Department shit. So I'm like, yeah, dude, if it's all team guys doing some shit.
Yeah. So when you were with USIS, what year was that? Was that in
06, 07? Yep.
So did that kind of round out your contracting career with them doing that? Or?
That did. I finished that out, and I realized my first deployment on the Shiloh was 96. Now here it is 07, and I'm in Baghdad. I've been gone for 11 years. My 2 kids went from tots to teenagers. Literally, I was so caught up in that storm of trying to move forward that I realized, like, damn, my kids are teenagers, dude.
Yeah.
And at that time, when I was in Israel, I started to date my current wife. Mm-hmm. And so, once you fall in love and you have other interests, like, shit gets a little scary in that, like, there's repercussions. When I was kind of in between marriages, I just didn't give a fuck. Like, whatever, dude, it's just me. Yeah. I realized my kids are getting older. I'm now in love with this gal, and I'm like, fuck, dude, why am I doing this? And then I remember we used to fly into, like, either Jordan or UAE, have a night, and then you'd fly in. And I'd be sitting there in my hotel room, like, it's one thing if you're in the military. Like, I have a choice. I could walk away from this.
Yeah.
Why am I doing this shit? Like, is it the paycheck? Is it
the bros?
The bros I keep finding? I luckily I was on good details, because as it got watered down over the years, there were some shit details. Anyone who was a security guard for half a day was now a contractor.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I noticed just even in 08, talking to the guys that I had met doing a little bit of contracting I did, was that early on, like you said, that 03, 04 time frame, it was super selective. The pay was good, but there was only like 1 or 2 shows in town, and they could do that. But as these new, chick of the weeks, as you put it, pop up, like, when the bidding wars start, then it's like, okay, well, how do we lower our price? Well, we lower our price by lowering our standards, and now you got beat cops and fucking security guards.
Exactly.
And, dudes that, no disrespect, but have no fucking business, doing that type of work, and they're doing it, and so, to me, like, that was a fucking scary element. And I never really had a whole lot of interest in doing contract work on a broader spectrum like that, but and a lot of it, frankly, was from hearing kind of the horror stories of guys as I was getting out, because I got out in November of 08. Hearing some of those stories of how it's getting watered down, and over that period of time, how it had gotten into what it had gotten into. But So, so you had, a fair bit of experience with the contracting, and then, so now you decide, okay, I'm done with the fucking contracting. I'm done with the military. I'm going to come back stateside. And now you decide, I'm gonna go into the Phoenix Police Department, basically.
Yeah.
Walk us through that process of how kind of that went.
So it was kind of funny. In contracting world, we used to bag on cops that were getting in.
Yeah.
Who the fuck are these pussies? And all this shit. And they were kind of the second class citizens.
Yeah.
And kind of a funny story. I guess I could name drop this dude. So part of that ERU project in Iraq was Mark Geist, who's better known as Oz these days. So he was on the same detail, but we became buddies because he's from Colorado. So I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm from Colorado, bro. He was a Marine, but he was a cop. So we were all kind of like, oh, you're a fucking cop, dude, whatever. So his call sign back then was Polter because his name is Mark Geist, Poltergeist.
Yeah.
So, we used to just, whatever, give each other hard times and stuff. And so it was kind of funny. I remember thinking like, fucking cops and all this shit. But then I started realizing like, what are you going to do when you get back home? I had a great time in Iraq. I did 2 pumps there. We hit Route Irish a lot. It was active, I mean, it was 06, 07 was kind of that second wind of violence.
Yeah, man, that was a hotbed of a time to be in Iraq. I don't give a fuck who you are. If you're wearing an American flag, like there's some shit
you were a
on.
Target, man. And luckily, I had already been somewhat indoctrinated in Israel. But each AO had its own. Like people ask me, which one was the worst? Israel was more evil because it's like biblical hatred between two people. Afghanistan was more wild. It was like the Wild West. There was no control and nobody scared of nobody. It was kind of a big fuck you contest. But Iraq was pretty fucking legit, man. Our camp was outside of the BIOP, is the airport there. So the bad guys know anyone coming and going's going through the BIOP. And the only route between the BIOP and the green zone was Route Irish, and our camp was right off Route Irish. So we were running up we called it the chicken run. Speed your friend. So as fast as those armored vehicles could go, small arms fire, roadsides, all this stuff. And then we shared a fence line with Camp Cropper where they were holding Saddam. So again, the bad guys know something's going on over there. So indirect fire, and it was pretty fucking wild. But that's where I met. I always want to call him Polter, but he's Oz now. Sorry, dude. I know you're famous and stuff, but dude, he's one of those guys though that he's still a cool dude, man.
Yeah.
I bumped into him up here in Dallas at a SWAT conference.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was there, and he looked at me. I looked at him like, oh shit, bro. And we still chat because he still lives in Colorado.
Yeah.
And so the next time I'm there, I want to sit down with him. And what an experience, obviously, he's been through.
Yeah.
But he was one of the dudes that kind of turned me on to the idea of law enforcement in that, what the fuck am I going to do? My advice to people that want to join the military nowadays is learn something in the military that will translate when you get out.
Yeah.
I wish I had been a corpsman or something, or learned a language. I was a 60 gunner air rep. So if you're hiring for air mobility or you need some belt fed shit, a stunt double for Full Metal Jacket 2, I'll play Animal Mother's son. That's about it. So it was people like him that kind of got that thought process going. And so I came back in 07. I left Iraq, went home to Colorado, and I'm sure you've experienced this. There's that honeymoon phase where you're home, you're glad to be home, and you see your parents and you see your friends and shit's cool. But then the reality happens of like, well, what the fuck am I going to do now?
Yeah.
And so that was my conundrum. I thought, well, shit, I mean, let me look into this cop stuff. So I looked on some websites. Basically, nobody was hiring in Colorado.
Yeah.
There's like 3,000 dudes try out for 2 slots in some podunk sheriff's department. One of my buddies that was a contractor who was a former cop, he was a Chicago cop, he said, bro, especially a dude like you need to go to a big city. Mm-hmm. Don't go to some small department. They won't be able to handle it. Like you need to blend in a great, he was a Chicago dude, so he knew. Mm-hmm. So my brother was living in Phoenix at the time. So I got on Phoenix's website, and right on the website it said like, now hiring 500 dudes. And I'm like, oh fuck, I can slip through the cracks, dude. I can be the gray dude for a minute. Yeah. And so in Colorado, they only tested like twice a year. The chances of getting it were none. So I call the number for the Phoenix dude. He's like, oh, yeah, we have a written exam every week. Just come on down. And I'm like, shit. So I call my brother. He goes, yeah, come on down, dude. So I hop in my Jeep and I go down, and I barely passed the written, but I passed.
Fucking ASVAB waiver.
Yeah. Well, they gave you like bonus points for being a veteran, and that's what qualified me. Swear to God.
Great.
It was like 10 points for veteran, and that's what bumped me above. Like,
we feel bad for you, so we're going to let you fucking come in.
Yeah, since you ate the pencil. So yeah, I went through that hire process, and I ended up, my brother owned some properties in Phoenix, so he shacked me up in one of his apartments, and I went through the process. You'll like this part. So it goes back to my Bud's talent. So I go through, there's like a written test, a PT test, and then there's like a background investigation. And the background thing was interesting because the background detective, luckily he was a cool dude, because talking to some of my other buddies, they did not have cool people that hired them. This dude's like, hey, I need to know everywhere you've lived. Anywhere you spent the night, I need to know. And I'm like, I was in the military, dude. Like, holy shit. And I was on a floating boat that went, there's probably places I forgot. So I tried to remember everywhere I fucking been. And we were there for hours. I was just like, and then I was in Guam. And then I was at Tinian and, whatever. Just, holy fuck, how many places do we go?
Yeah.
And then it started with, I need to go over every tattoo you have. And I'm like, oh, shit.
How much time you got?
Yeah, again, poor dude's typing away like, okay, what's on the left? So somehow I made it through most of the process. I did have to do the polygraph twice, but I passed. So where the rub was the psych eval.
Yeah.
I know.
Fucking
surprising.
Gaylord Fokker style.
Yeah, oh, dude. Yeah. So so I had talked to some of my buddies that were in the process, and they're like, yeah, I was in the psych's office for probably about 30 minutes. After 10 minutes, I was asked to leave. So, so this is how it went down. And this is embarrassing because I know people are listening. All of a sudden, I go in there and everything's cool. It's a female psych person, whoever she is, I don't know, doctor, whatever it is. And she goes, do you look at porn on the internet? Again, going back to my third phase skill set. I said, well, yes, I do. And she says...
All distinguished. Well, yes, I actually do.
I'm quite of a connoisseur. I'll take porn for $400, Alex. I'm telling you, if that was a game show, man.
I'd fucking slay it.
Oh, dude. Some deployments are lonely, So I said, well, yeah, I do. And she said, well, do you look at anything inappropriate, like animals or children? And I'm like, no. And she said something about, like, what do you look at? And I said something smart-ass remark about Asian porn or whatever. And I said, well, hold on, let me explain something here. And she goes, well, wait, how many times a day do you masturbate?
How is that even a fucking question?
Dude, this is getting personal, man. And I'm just like, and it's a female too. Yeah. Like, it's one thing jerking off on an airplane to San Clemente with your bros, But now I'm talking to this, chick in a little fancy suit type thing, and I'm like, fuck, I don't know.
How's that your business?
Yeah.
How many times do you fucking rub?
Well, I thought about it, and I was like, I don't know, like 8.
Jesus Christ.
And she just was like...
She's like, no, seriously.
She goes, I think we're done here. And I said, no, let me explain myself. I said, here's the deal. So my wife is in Thailand. It's taken you guys 5 months to this point to hire me. I haven't seen my wife in 8 months. She's applying for, a visa to come over here. I'm in an apartment that has 3 futons, a PlayStation 2, and a laptop. I really have nothing to do. I said, look, if you look at a 24-hour period, it's not that much. It's more of a marathon, not a sprint. I'm pacing myself. It's kind of out of boredom. So she's like, okay, I think we're done here. And so I had made friends with one of the SWAT dudes prior to me being in the hire process. So I call him. I'm like, bro, I think I fucked up the psych. He goes, what did you tell her? So I told him the story. He goes, all right, hold on, let me call you back. So I think he did me a solid. He called me back however many minutes later, and he goes, you're good, bro. I was like, oh, thank God. That was the last step of the hire process.
Just to be a fucking cop.
Apparently you can't touch yourself to be a cop. There's a bunch of non-masturbating dudes holding the law. Yeah.
7 times a day, that's it.
Yeah, I guess that's
anything above 7.
Anything above 7, you're not qualified. So I oozed past that process, and
no pun intended.
Yeah, right. And then man, that started the journey. I learned to maybe not tell the whole truth. don't slit your throat.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm just not gonna tell you everything.
Exactly. How many times a day? A few.
Yeah,
a
more
few.
than once.
More than once. Less than 100.
Christ. So one of the things that I think I know I'm curious about in terms of transferring over from between being a SEAL and doing years as a contractor and going through some shit there, and then transferring over to Phoenix PD, like. I know that one of the things that a lot of civilians either assume or wonder about is tempering your temperament or your mentality, your like your behavior, basically, from going through all of that and now being a cop interacting with Joe Q public fucking citizen, like. We'll get into kind of the chronological timeline of your experience there and get into some of the meat and potatoes of the patrol and narc work. But I'm curious, like, did you find it difficult to be in the academy, whether it's the academy or out on the street or whatever? Is it like realizing like you're not in fucking Iraq, you're not in Afghanistan, like you're not in Israel, like you're in Phoenix, fucking Arizona, and this dude, isn't trying to kill you, like he doesn't have a suicide vest, like what can you tell me about that experience in terms of being able to temper that mentality a little bit? And was it a struggle or how did that work?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a change of your mindset. The academy did a good job of, and there was a group of us, there was other vets that were in that process. And I think we all kind of struggled with the same thing. I learned early on in scenarios in the academy, you can't solve everything by shooting them. So,
how many people were in the academy and how long was it, real quick?
Our academy, I want to say, was 4 months. And it's not a live-in academy. So you go Monday through Friday and it's full days. It's a lot of classroom. But we had a retired Marine Sergeant Major that ran it. So it was pretty good, man. Yeah, it was. How
many dudes? Or how many people?
I want to say we had about 50 dudes in our class, and at that time we were in full swing, so there's probably 7 classes rotating through. So on that compound, and it was a multi-jurisdictional academy, so we had like State Police, Tempe PD, Phoenix PD. Phoenix being the biggest agency, there's about 3,000 officers in Phoenix, which is like the 6th or 7th largest police department in the nation. So it's pretty legit, pretty full force. Yeah, man. I mean, we only take our hats off to like Chicago, LA, New York, things like that. Otherwise, we're pretty much
the bigger ones.
Yeah,
big fish.
Yeah, so it's a pretty rigid process, and to be honest, I actually enjoyed it because I think contracting kind of warmed me up to the idea of there's other things out there, there's other ways to skin the cat, and so I knew that I was kind of a new guy in someone else's world. Mm-hmm. So I definitely, especially for the younger dudes that were like 21, 22, 23, this is their like buds experience. This is their like, oh fuck, I've always wanted to be a cop. This is so cool. And I didn't want to be that asshole that's like, this is gay. I just shut my mouth and I just let them have their experience and I would do whatever it was. But I found the challenges in the academic portion.
Yeah.
Like they really, obviously you have to know parts of law and what you can and can't do and how to write a report.
Yeah.
For example, in Iraq, if we got into a dick dragger, we filled out a Foxtrot report, which was an email to our team leader in case the State Department or the Prime Minister inquired about an incident. It was just documented in like a 3-sentence synopsis.
Crayon on a napkin.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, now you're learning to write a shoplifter report that's like 4 pages long, and I'm like, why the fuck is this so hard? Like, dickhead stole a pack of fucking, for shooting someone, you used to have 3 sentences. Now for the missing candy bar, I'm like, holy shit. So they had like report writing classes and constitutional law and all this. I was like, holy shit. But I was smart. And that my study buddy was, he ended up being the honor grad for the academic portion of it.
Yeah.
So
he carried you through buds.
Well, yeah, pretty much. I found that dude. And so he highlighted what I needed to know in our notes. And I just memorized his highlighted portions, and thank God. But I still held the standard. I got the Firearms Achievement Award. So I did my little frogman part. Yeah. I could still shoot good, but I appreciated it for what it was.
Yeah.
The defensive tactics were pretty legit back then. They got away from the Kung Fu Seagal shit.
Yeah.
A lot of the DT instructors, there was some local MMA gym that where they were training, so they actually got you out there and battled with you, because some of these recruits had never been in a fight.
Yeah.
And so you would go for it. I mean, they would line you up and you would just duke it out and stuff. And they had a little event called baby boxing and stuff. And so I appreciated it for what it was. I did have some problems early on in the scenarios because I was a little too quick to go to the gun.
Yeah. And I'm shocked by that.
It's weird, right? Well, they teach you how to de-escalate stuff and do different things. And so having contracting opened my mind to other things, obviously working with other people from other units and stuff. So I was pretty receptive to it. And dude, in fact, I wish I could remember his name. I was on a break. And again, there were 7 classes running through, and this old dude was looking at me. I think I remember. I don't want to say his name because it could be wrong, but he was looking at me, and I'll find the name because you would know it.
Yeah.
And he's looking at me, and he walks over to me and he goes, "Were you in the teams, bro?" I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "So was I." And he gave me his name, and I'm like, "Holy shit!" I remember he was a warrant officer.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Holy fucking shit! You look different now." He was actually hired by Gilbert PD.
No shit.
And I was like, small world, man.
Yeah, no, there's a couple of canine officers. Shout out to Gilbert PD and Steve, and I sold a dog to those guys named Bink that ended up having to get his nuts cut off because he had a swollen prostate, so he got retired pretty early. But those guys are doing some solid work in Gilbert. So, shout out to Steve and Bink and the other crew out there. But
nice, man. Oh, and real quick, dude, you did me a solid. Remember you sent a book signed to Mike Lynn, who's a canine handler out of Phoenix.
Yeah.
And he was so pumped. And he's like, "I can't believe you know Mike RItland." And the fact that you sent that book, man, he was so pumped, man. He's still with canines now. He was a SWAT dude, but went into canines and was so super pumped about your book, dude. Thank you for doing that, man.
Shit, anytime, man. That's easy day, man. But
that was cool.
That's good shit. But yeah, so you met the warrant officer and
so that was badass, dude. Small world.
Yeah.
And actually I was treated pretty well by the cadre there because they obviously know your background and shit.
Yeah.
And they knew I was quiet and humble and allowed other people to have the experience, so no one fucked with me being a former team guy. There was another SF dude going in another class, and so we kind of were buddies and things.
Yeah, I'm curious about that, like academy wise. Obviously knowing your background's half of it, but did you find that course was more like a gentleman's course, or was it more like was it more that way for you and not some of the other people because of your background, or what was that?
Definitely. I saw it more as a gentleman's course, whereas there were people that were stressed the fuck out, but they were good. I was a squad leader. It's semi-paramilitary.
Yeah.
And so some of the things I had learned in the military and even contracting, I was able to pay forward. I think 3 of the 4 squad leaders were former military. And so we gave them the class the concept of, hey, the harder we are on ourselves, the more we police ourselves, the cadre is going to fuck off. Like, it's kind of like buds. The quicker the class comes together and the quicker you get your shit dialed in, the less shit you're going to get from them. And so we kind of paid forward our military experiences into a leadership role there. So we had a real good class. And it was kind of fun, at least I saw it, but some of the guys that were in their early 20s and this is their first kind of boot campish experience were a little stressed.
Yeah.
But obviously for me and the other, military dudes that were there, it fails in comparison to some of those experiences. So for me, I was able to kind of kick back other than the academic stuff. I stressed on weekends.
You just had to copy the highlights, right?
Yeah, exactly. Whatever was highlighted, I memorized.
Yeah, shit.
So it was a fairly fun process, and I thought, cool, this is a new chapter, and we'll see where this goes. I did have some heads up on which precinct to choose because of some of the people that I knew ahead of time. They kind of gave me the layout of the city and where you might want to work, and so I chose a precinct called South Mountain Precinct, which is South Phoenix.
That's the rough fucking customer part, right?
It is. That's the south side of Phoenix is pretty active. There's a lot of things that happen in South Phoenix, and so I've been blessed to have somewhat of a layered experience.
Yeah.
I never had too intensive experience in one area, but the combination of, the teams and contracting and now,
So was it kind of a graduated?
It was, and it just was kind of this upward swing of experiences, and what I didn't see in the military I saw as a contractor, and what I didn't see as a contractor I saw as a cop. I mean, it was just such individual, and I'm just grateful to have those experiences. And I have several small circles I've met a lot of good people along the way, and so that Forrest Gump luck that I seem to have carried into the law enforcement community. I ended up at South Mountain Precinct, and God, I felt like I was trapped in a cop movie, dude. Like, holy shit, we can do this shit. And I mean, it was
nutso.
It was nutso in its own way. It was so foreign to me.
Yeah.
And it was such a different task that I had to perform. I couldn't rely 100% on my prior skill sets.
Yeah.
A lot of law enforcement's thinking on your feet, knowing how to talk to people. Yeah. And obviously you're there to de-escalate things.
It seems like, it's like half negotiating coupled with being able to read people.
Yeah. You get really good at reading people, man.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things, with all the canine work I do, I work with a shit ton of cops all over the country, from little podunk departments that have one dog to major metropolitan areas that have fucking 50 of them, and everything in between. But it's really interesting for me to, to talk to a lot of these guys and hear some of their stories. But that's one thing that's pretty recurrent, a recurring theme is their ability, because body language is such a big fucking deal in dogs. Like, I mean, it's not a big deal, it's everything.
Yeah.
But it's such an important component to being a cop too, of reading people's body language and how they're carrying themselves and things like that, how they talk to you and nod and whatever. And, but I'm curious, like from when you got out of the academy, you went to South Precinct. What was that first kind of indoctrination period, the first couple of weeks of on the job type shit where you're like learning your right and left flank of what you can and can't do? Like, walk us through that.
It's overwhelming, man. Law enforcement is super complex because you're really the buffer between the law and criminals. So you have to understand both.
Yeah.
You have to understand how the bad guys think in order to catch them, but then you're in court getting your ass handed to you by some fucking attorney who graduated from a super cool place. And so you have to learn. I was just overwhelmed. I always said, I don't know if I'm smart enough to be a cop. Like, holy shit, because it's 5 minutes of fun is now 6 hours of paperwork.
Yeah.
And you have to write these reports in such detail. And the reason why is it's going to go to court a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, and you don't remember the incident in its entirety. You're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I remember that. But it's your report that you're allowed to look at during testimony. You're like, the more you put into that report, the more accurate you're going to be. So you got to become.
So I mean, it by default, it makes you detailed as fuck.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just the detail that you have to observe. So I remember being in the FTO phase, the field training phase, and your FTO would be like, where are we? You're like, fuck, I don't know. Well, what if something happens and you get on the radio? You have to give out your location. Everywhere you drive around, you have to know where you're at. So you had to memorize the grid of your area. You had to know the 100 blocks. I'm at 1400 West Baseline, or wherever it is. So you're constantly looking at street signs, and because if some shit pops off, you have to know
right the fuck where
exactly. Eventually, we got GPSs, so at least your laptop in your car would give a location. But what if you just chase the dude 7 fucking blocks?
Yeah.
You're nowhere near your car.
Yeah.
So as you're doing a foot pursuit, you're looking at street signs. Like, it just that constant observation. Or if something happens, you have to describe a vehicle, describe a person. So in a snapshot, you have to have such a detail of what the dude was wearing, or chick, race, gender, description, clothing, direction of travel. Like, holy fuck, it's a lot that you have to process in a split second. So to me, that was overwhelming. The senior guys that I worked with, I was just in awe. Like, holy fuck, they're like really smart dudes.
Yeah.
Obviously, anything you do long enough, you get better and better at it. And for me, getting on the radio, I was just like, fucking shit, fuck, this asshole's going that way. And also, what's funny is the military phonetic code is different than the law enforcement. So
great.
reading license plates.
Yeah, like you're all fucked up.
I'm like, I can't even get out a damn license plate on the radio, man. Oh, fuck.
Oh, that's fucking priceless. I mean, in terms of that, I mean, one of the things that I think most people, and even myself included, having never been a cop, is, the intricacies of it. How hard it really is. Yeah. To navigate all of that shit at the same time. I don't even. It's not that I would say I think I know that our law enforcement community does not get proper accolades for the shit that they have to go through, and when you couple that with just kind of in the last 8 years, 10 years of just that constant negative bullshit that they get thrown at them nonstop, it's like, goddamn, like I don't envy those guys or you guys, man. Like, it's just that being in that position, like, holy shit. Like, I mean, talk about a rock and a hard place. Like, I'm baffled by the amount of shit those guys have to go through. And it was one of the things that, again, in talking with a lot of these cops that I conversate with, is saying, when I was in the military, like, it was real fucking black and white. Like, you're overseas, you're fighting somebody that looks nothing like you, doesn't speak the same goddamn language, it's plain as day, like, and you're not having to fill out reports. You don't have fucking body cams. You don't have 19 motherfuckers with cell phones videotaping your ass while you're talking to somebody. Like, it's so much more flexible in terms of what you're allowed to do and not do. And what I'm curious of is, I guess, obviously, it took kind of a break-in period, for you to get to that point. But, were there any instances or experience you had that after the fact you're like, God damn, I really fucked that up, as a cop early on or at any point?
Well, I tell you, the hardest thing for me that transitions into that is it's the only job I ever had where people fucking hate you.
Yeah.
I'm used to being liked. I was the class clown as a kid, as a team guy. You're kind of a popular dude. Everyone loves team guys and, whatever. Everything was kind of shits and giggles. Like, it was a good vibe. Whereas a cop, like, motherfuckers hate you just because.
Yeah.
And you eventually realize that they don't hate you. They just hate the uniform.
Yeah. They hate the establishment of it.
Yeah, they hate what you represent. Or, I mean, we always jokingly said they hate you till they need you. Someone's bleeding on the front lawn, even the thugs will call 911. Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. So and then shoot you when you fucking show up.
Yeah, that happens, man. So it was a tough transition for me. It was that mental shift of, damn, dude, like, there's just people that fucking hate you. Even kids flipping you off in the neighborhoods and shit.
Yeah. Throwing fucking rocks and shit.
Yeah, it was tough, man. It was just that, like, realization of, like, you're around misery. Like, nobody calls you because it's like, hey, we're having a barbecue, come over. It's like something bad happened. It's this person's worst 15 minutes of their life, and then you go to the next call and the next call. And so if you ever wonder why a cop's grumpy, you don't know what call he just came from.
Yeah.
It could have been a call where some infant was stabbed by a babysitter or something, and now he's dealing with your fucking barking dog complaint, and he's like, I really don't give a shit about your barking dog.
Yeah.
You think he's rude, but he just saw a dead baby or a car on fire with, whatever. There's bad things that cops see. For me, my overseas service, I was able to compartmentalize that.
Yeah.
I didn't really bring it home. Whereas a cop, you're 30 minutes from the house. So, of course, you bring shit home that you saw on the street.
Right down the street.
Oh, yeah. I mean, story after story of, I, without a doubt, saw more dead things in people in law enforcement than I ever did overseas.
Yeah.
It's, and again, it's that 30-minute transition you have to turn the light switch off as opposed to that 2-day plane flight.
Yeah.
By the time you get home, you're fairly back in the game. Whereas as a cop, man, you could have had a really bad day and then you're home. And as soon as your foot's in the door, you got to be dad and husband. And so it's a quick transition. So hats off to the brothers and sisters still doing it, because it takes its toll on you, man.
No, I mean, like I said, having not been in that position, but being around it a lot more than most people, I see, the toll that it takes, and I'm routinely impressed with the thin blue line, as it were, and their ability to handle that with such equanimity in terms of of just being able to being faced with just a shit sandwich and being able to handle it and be the buffer between evil and every fucking buddy else.
Yeah.
They are the bumper that exists between fucking good and bad. And the fact that they don't get more both latitude and forgiveness and credibility and appreciation that they do, I think is a fucking Greek tragedy.
Absolutely.
And it really bugs the shit out of me. And I hope, my hope is that for anybody out there listening that doesn't have much experience with law enforcement, I know there's a lot of brothers in blue and green and Border Patrol and whatever that listen to this, but know that your fucking service is well goddamn appreciated in this household. I can tell you that much. But I hope that episodes like this bring to the forefront a much greater both realization and appreciation for what the brothers and sisters in blue do. And I'll save the rest of it for when we wrap this episode up. But moving past kind of the coming into your own, as it were, as a patrol guy, from 2007 until about 2016 or so, is when you were there. I mean, that's a pretty significant amount of time. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, you did patrol for a number of years, but then you got into, we'll call it the sexier stuff. Nothing against the patrol guys out there, but
they're the sled dogs. They're the hard workers.
Yeah,
man.
that's the bulk of the work that needs to be done, and that's the fucking reality of it. To me, it's very similar to the military, like patrol, infantry, whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's you need motherfuckers
Putting
out
in
there
work,
grinding it out day in, day out, and that is what keeps fucking law and order in communities, But there's another side that obviously that's where more movies are made and books are written about, and people are, I think, inherently more interested in because of the rarity of it. But from a narcotics and undercover work and things of that nature, I know that because of it not being that long ago, that there's a number of things that you can't discuss, but there are several that you are, and we're going to get into that. Walk me through kind of chronologically, from patrol, how long you did that, and then moving into the narc and undercover stuff.
Yeah, it was pretty quick, actually. I want to say...
That's what she said.
You're right. I know. I'm still working on that.
8 times a day, you ain't lasting 4 hours.
I know. I got a hair trigger, man. I got like the equivalent of the competition gun with the hair trigger.
Got a 2-pound trigger.
Oh, man, absolutely. No, I think part of it had to do with my military background. Obviously, there were people in the precinct and department that knew what I did before, and they were interested. Especially when I came in, there weren't a lot of vets that had left the military or contracting, so I was kind of the first wave of weirdos to come back from overseas, and so there was the curiosity factor. So I think I was about a year and a half into it, and I got approached in the locker room by a guy who's now a dear friend. Yeah, it was like...
Where is this going?
Well, it was like the Top Gun scene. Yeah. We were in towels. I was Maverick. Iceman came up. I was like, what's up, bro? So kind of
snap me with the towel.
Yeah, exactly. So I was basically approached because of my background and then, the way I look, the tattoos and stuff. And so my buddy's like, hey, if you've ever been interested in this kind of a thing, you could do like a temp. I know you're a patrol sergeant. We're good friends. We were back on patrol back in the day. This might be something you're good at. Your demeanor, you're kind of a relaxed dude. Some cops are kind of robotic and preachy, and usually the younger goody-goody guys, they're not too good at it, but I was more of the relaxed, like, hey, bro. Yeah, yeah, right?
You remind me of somebody. Pauly Shore, maybe?
That's right. Pauly Shore and Maverick had a kid.
Yeah, we need a stoner undercover guy. You're our guy.
Yeah, right? Dude, in fact, he told me, don't shower, don't shave, just come into work. I'm
done.
Like, dude,
I'm already not doing that.
I can do this.
I'm already doing that.
Fuck. I think I found a job in law enforcement I could do. Just be a dirtbag and show up.
Just be yourself, buddy.
So I was like, dude, I can do a temp. Like, that's great. This would be fucking awesome. So he and my patrol sergeant were buddies from back in the day. And so my boss was like, yeah, dude, have fun. I'm really trying not to use his name in reference, but this dude is just kind of a wild dude. He's a funny fucking dude. And so I had a great time with him. So he thought that he would get me wet with my experience being plainclothes at the homeless shelter. And my first hand-to-hand transaction was buying crack at the homeless shelter. And I got to be honest with you, dude, my feelings were hurt. I blended into the homeless shelter, and not one person said, "Are you a cop?" I was like, God,
they felt bad for you.
I looked like one of these dudes. I was like, this isn't good, man. Like, how
You're
is this?
a natural, Clark.
Dude, I'm like, God. So it was kind of like a weird experience, man. So I was on a temporary assignment. I forgot how long my temp was for. A couple weeks. We were running around, and he was just kind of slowly introducing me to how things work and stuff, and to see if I was digging it. But I got to be honest, it's weird. Obviously, it was nothing like, one of your other guest experiences. If you're listening, bro, you the man. This is all just basic street level stuff. But being introduced into it slowly, I got to admit, I was pretty nervous.
Yeah.
Because I'm a pretty genuine dude. Like, I don't like to bullshit people. I'd rather be the guy that throws on a fucking plate carrier and kicks your fucking door, as opposed to like you're making friends with these motherfuckers. And I also didn't know the lingo, so I was kind of quiet, and I would shy up in my opinion. But you learn little tricks, little icebreakers. Like cigarettes are always a good icebreaker. If someone's asking questions, you can burn one or offer them one. And so I learned some of the little tricks to kind of keep things more natural. But dude, you find yourself in some like tweaker's apartment. And our little trick was like, hey, can I use the bathroom? And that was your chance to do a little recce. But, you don't know if someone's in the next room with weapons. Are we going to get jacked? And, you always have a little QRF team somewhere nearby that if certain things are
But that, I mean, past 30 seconds is 10 lifetimes in that environment.
Or depending on the area, maybe they have to be outside the neighborhood and it's a couple minutes.
Yeah.
So we had our system, which I won't disclose, of how to alert the boys coming in to rescue the day. But yeah, you're on your own for a while.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of questions, like, well, what do you do about names? What do you do about like guns? I mean, don't they know that cops carry Glocks? Or what if someone asks you to, hey, hit this joint? Or, there were a lot of questions I had that I won't go over policies and procedures, but my friend kind of covered and kind of put my mind at ease. And so there were some tricks that said, all right, I think I can do this. But at the time, to be honest, it made my wife nervous. She was like, well, what if we're at fucking Walmart and you see one of these dudes?
Yeah.
Like, what do we do? And I'm like, fuck, I don't know. So then the next day I'm asking my bro, like, well, what if we're at Walmart? It kind of made everybody nervous.
Shit, yeah.
So to kind of segue into an event that happened, we were going to work this one neighborhood. And again, he was getting me used to doing hand-to-hands and kind of how the business works. So we have our dinner and we're kind of plotting what we're going to do and go into this area. Well, I had worked that area in patrol, but I wasn't too worried about them recognizing me because there's a bunch of us and I hadn't been on the street that long. But I knew that area was a bad neighborhood. It was a Crip neighborhood and there was a lot of crack being slung in there and stuff. So I went from the driver's position to he wanted me to get some experience to do hand-to-hands from a vehicle. And I'm already nervous just based on my prior experiences. Vehicles are a bad place to be if shit goes down because your mobility is almost none. So we leave our little launch point from the restaurant we're at. And I remember asking him, like, hey, dude, would it make you nervous if I pre-staged my Glock under my leg? Because I'm afraid by the time you peel through layers of clothes, if we're getting jacked, like, I'm fucking done. He goes, no, bro, do what you do. I said, well, I just don't want to make anyone nervous. Like, I don't really know how you guys roll. So I pre-staged. I'm in the passenger seat of this van, and the van was set up a certain way. We had a tactical team that was disguised in this van. We called it inappropriately the Chomo van. It was a shady looking van. Two crusty dudes up front. And so I pre-staged my Glock, luckily being left-handed. That's very advantageous for anything that might happen outside my passenger window. And so the pistol grip of the Glock was sticking out of my leg, so I would slouch and just kind of put my hand over it like I was kind of just covering my junk or something. So without going into too much detail of the situation, because there's still people that are active related to this, the hand-to-hand went bad, and I ended up through the window having to shoot a dude 5 times. That's also why I'm not a fan of the 40 cal, because dude's still with us. I was pissed. Well, not necessarily pissed, but you know what I mean. If you're going to do the deed.
Yeah, fucking finish it.
But I did get a hit. I severed his spine, and he's in a wheelchair. I won't disclose any further than that. But I was like, all right, bro, whatever. It's really neither here nor there. But it was a very tense situation. It was very up close. It was very fast. It was an oh shit moment for sure.
Yeah.
But luckily I had the thought to pre-stage my weapon where I did.
Yeah.
And that ended up being a good thing. Everyone else that was involved in the situation thought that it was me taking rounds. But I had a good enough reaction time because of how I had set things up. And it was just kind of pure, that Forrest Gump luck I keep talking about. So it was kind of, there's always a little comedy in every situation. So obviously, being a shooting overseas is way different than a shooting stateside. It almost seemed, as soon as I blinked my eyes, the SWAT team was there, which never happens. Those dudes take like hours to get there.
Yeah, fashionably late.
I remember we were holding on an alleyway, and I look back, and here's these dudes in their full count. I'm like, holy fucking shit. So
cavalry showed up.
Yeah, like fucking ASAP, dude. So it turns out they were conducting some training going back to their station, which was nearby, and they happened to hear we call it a 998, officer involved shooting, come out. And so they were like, oh, fuck, that's like right here. So that's how the ninjas showed up so quick. I was like, holy fuck, you guys are good. So kind of it started to unfold like, now your whole world opens up. The city swarms. Mm-hmm. And it was still an active scene. One of the dudes had got away. There were 3 people on the transaction that were involved. I shot one. He was bleeding on the sidewalk. There were 2 other people. One had scooted. We had one in custody. So you're immediately whisked away by a supervisor. So I was with some chick sergeant, but my patrol sergeant, I was on temporary assignment at this time. So my patrol sergeant comes over and says, hey, this is my dude. I got him. So we sit in the patrol car. We're not allowed to talk about the incident per policy, but he's like, dude, are you okay? Yeah, I'm good. Everything's cool. So immediately the union shows up and they get an attorney. And so you go into this, we call it the Mac van, where it's like they got snacks in the bathroom and the attorney talks to you.
That's my kind of van.
Dude, it's kind of comfy. I did not own the van,
Oh,
bro.
you fucking bastard.
In that moment, so Hell Week in the Mac van. Damn. Yeah. All right. I just realized that.
I'm so disappointed, Clark.
I know. I'm sorry, dude. So I'm kind of nervous. Like, damn, dude, this is like some serious shit. Like, you shoot someone stateside. It just because you're a cop, you don't got superpowers, bro. You're now a suspect in a homicide because dude's on his way to the hospital bleeding.
Yeah.
They don't know if he's going to live or die. So my attorney says you're going to probably do a walkthrough with homicide, but you don't have to. You have to talk to internal affairs, but your walkthrough with homicide is optional. And so I said, well, would it hurt me or help me? Well, it's neither here nor there, which is like horrible advice because the decision's back on my shoulders. So I said, well, I have nothing to hide. Like I just didn't walk into a Walmart and blast somebody. Mm-hmm. So I did my walkthrough with homicide, and this is kind of the funny part. Real crusty old dude, typical detective like Nick Nolte from fucking 48 Hours or something. Just this crusty old dude.
Gary Busey from Point Break.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Kind of one of them dudes. And I could tell he'd been on the job for a while. And he's like, how long you been on the department? I'm like, 1.5 years. And he's like, he goes, in your plain clothes already? I was like, oh, no, I'm just on a temp. And he goes, what? He goes, how long you been on your temp? I go, 3 days. And he goes, oh. He goes, holy shit, you're off to a good start. I was like, I don't fucking know what's going on, bro. I
just work here.
I'm just on a ride along. I don't know what happened, dude.
I signed a waiver.
Dude, so luckily he was cool. He saw the humor in it, and he knew I was a junior dude. So, you know, I felt like the questions went appropriately. Like, he wasn't gunning for me. Obviously, they got to get on tape, and they walk you through the scene and all this stuff. And so I was there. And before we did the walkthroughs, he goes, hey, is there anyone you need to call? Because the news is going to pop off. There's been a shooting, and it's in an area where I'm sure loved ones know you work. Do you need to call someone? I'm like, yes, I'm going to call my wife. Well, my wife, being from Thailand, a little bit was lost in translation because in my precinct, there's shootings every fucking day. Yeah. She didn't know that I was a shooter in a shooting. So she was like, okay, I see you soon, honey. You know, her cute little, sorry, baby. Her little accent. So I'm doing my walkthrough with homicide. Brum, brum, brum. I'm like, can I answer that? He goes, okay, off tape. And she goes, where are you, honey? You late? I'm like, honey, I've been in a shooting. Like, this is fucking serious. I can't talk. Like, I gotta go. Bye. So I do my walkthrough with homicide, and that
fucking accent's
that
great.
takes forever, right? That takes forever. So when you're done with homicide, you got to go to internal affairs.
Yeah.
So I'm like, fuck,
that's like some shit out of a movie. Like internal affairs is showing up. Like shit just got serious.
Dude, yeah. Because now homicide's got whatever they need. And now internal affairs wants their hooks in you. I'm like, oh my God, dude. I think my shooting was like at 8 at night. Now with IA, it's like 2, 3 in the morning. So I'm just like batshit crazy. I'm still kind of pumped, like, yo, I shot it, dude. Holy fuck, this is what the fuck is going on? And this is definitely the closest engagement I've ever had, dude. Yeah. So I was like pretty fucking like wired. Like this is pretty. So my wife calls again. I'm like, can I answer my phone? Now she's pissed. Like she thinks I snuck off to a strip club or something. Like, it's 2 in the morning. Where are you? I'm like, honey, there's been a fucking shooting. Like I can't. So I clear fucking IA. It's like 7 a.m., dude.
God damn.
And they give you a police escort back to your apartment. My wife's like in bed. I go to my apartment. I don't know. It's 7:30, 8 a.m. It's like 12 hours after the incident. I'm just like, can't even think from getting drilled with questions. And I go upstairs and she's like, why you been so long? I don't understand. So I'm like, get downstairs, turn on the news. So she turns on the news and she's like, oh shit. And I'm like, yeah, holy fuck, it's been a long day, So it was kind of the comedy in that whole situation, man. Jesus so that was my introduction to that community. Work. Yeah. So eventually I ended up testing formally into that process and I got a slot there.
Yeah.
And so I continued, doing some work with that unit for a while. And so it was definitely a rough takeoff. The rest of the flight was smooth, no turbulence. It was fairly uneventful. So it was just a rough start.
Yeah, no shit. I mean, that's drinking from the fire hose. It's funny, the former guest that you were alluding to, Jay Dobbins that we had on a couple episodes ago, had kind of a similar experience. Like 4 days on the job, he gets fucking shot in the chest and almost dies. And it's like, like there seems to be a recurring theme. It's almost like clearing a house, like it's the fatal funnel. Like it's jumping through or as soon as you cross the threshold into the room, like that's the danger zone. No different than into that work, like that early periods. Where you're just heads on a swivel, but you don't really know what the fuck's going on.
It's different because when you're in uniform, people run from you. When you're undercover, they come to you. Like it's danger close. You're sucking these people in. Yeah. Well, they're sucking you into their world, but the appearance is, you know what I mean? Like they're this close. You can't pat them down. You don't have a vest on.
Yeah.
It's fucking weird, man.
Yeah.
I never was comfortable. I never caught the itch for it. I'd rather just put on a vest and a helmet and kick your door. I didn't
overtly offensive.
I was always nervous. What if this or what if that? There's so many what ifs because it's not as scripted.
Yeah.
As dynamic as uniform service is, it's still there's a formula to it.
There's still almost a choreographed routine to
this
protocol.
happens, do this. If this happens, do that. Undercover, it's by the seat of your pants and it's personality based. Like. There's not this barrier between you and the suspect. Like you're pretending to be a suspect with a suspect. Like you're bonding with these dudes. You're having normal conversations with them. Yeah. It's fucking weird, man.
Real quick, before we get into some of the psychology behind that, can you disclose, when that went bad, I know you can't say a whole lot about it, but did the dude fucking draw down on you and that's what solicited that?
He did. He tried to jack us. Yeah, absolutely.
Did he get any rounds off?
No, none.
Fucking easy there, quick draw.
It was because I pre-staged my weapon the way I did, dude. And luckily I had just that thought, dude. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
But I do know, like in Afghanistan, we started zip tying our Serpa holsters up on our chest rigs because you can't get to that drop holster if someone comes up to your window.
Yeah.
So it was kind of that thought back to those days. I'm like, hey, can I put this weapon here and not make anyone nervous? No, bro, do it.
Yeah.
Had I tried to pull some layers of clothing back and dude.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same exact reason, even though I've never fired out of a vehicle, in terms of, over here or anything like that. But, I always carry a little Ruger LCR 357 mag, tiny ass little 1.5 J-frame, no hammer in the console for that reason. Cause like, even though I'm always strapped, in my waistband with what I'm carrying. When you're, especially being a left-handed in the driver's seat with the seatbelt on, like, motherfucker, you better have a hot minute.
Yeah,
because that's how long it's going to take to get your shit out and get it on ready. But so yeah, I always carry an extra. I mean, almost like a backup gun, but I always keep it either in the door or in the console, like between the seats, so I can grab that motherfucker, real quick. But that's some wild shit. I mean, it's. And to me, it's one of the things that I hope people realize is that, this is a guy, who's been overseas, as a SEAL, as a contractor, and still, like, the threat that exists here stateside on the streets is no less fucking dangerous. And in a lot of ways, it's more dangerous, because there's such an ever-present, reality of you being a fucking beacon or a goddamn strobe light of law enforcement that everybody else can see. I mean, it's kind of like when you're at home at night, and this is one of the security measures that we talk about a lot in terms of being a preventative. But a lot of times people hear something, they turn their fucking lights on. Which is the dumbest thing you can do if it's nighttime and you hear something, like, keep your goddamn lights off. But that's what it is. It's like being in a house at night with your lights on. Like, that's what being a uniformed cop is.
Yeah.
Because everybody else knows you're a cop and you don't have a fucking clue what
it's the unknown. That's every time you leave the gates of that precinct, you don't know what the fuck's going to happen. At least when you're overseas, you leave the gates, you're pretty sure you know what's going to happen or what's possible.
Yeah, your guard's
As a cop, it's mostly boredom.
Yeah.
But it's that 10% of what the fuck that catches people.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's the unknown, man.
Yeah. So once you got into the in the actual slot on the UC work, I'm curious, especially being in Phoenix, being in Arizona, in a border state, like, you hear on the news and just in kind of mainstream media or just our pop culture for that matter, whether it's Breaking Bad or all the host of fucking different Netflix series or whatever that. That have shows about, whether it's human trafficking or drop houses or whatever.
Yeah.
Being on the south side of Phoenix like that, like, that's a pretty fucking kind of a highway for bullshit. Like, can you share some experiences that you had that kind of stand out as, whether it's, cartel stuff or undercut, whatever it is, like, that, that people would be interested in hearing about that you've dealt with?
Yeah, definitely. So when I was on my detail, I caught a whisper in the hallway about camouflage and night vision. I was like, what? You could do that as a cop? Like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
So they said, well, hey, it's this detail that does this. Basically, they're stalking motherfuckers in the desert. And I'm like, what? As a fucking cop, dude? Holy shit. Like, who do I need to call?
Yeah.
So they give me the dude's name and number. So I call this dude out of the blue because I'm so pumped. It's night vision and camouflage. You had me. So I call this dude, and he's basically like, who the fuck are you, and how'd you get my number? And I said, well, I'm assigned to this squad. And he goes, who's the sergeant? So I told him, and he goes, all right, let me call you back. So he called my boss, and my boss spoke well of me and told him my background. And so this dude calls me back, oh, you were a SEAL? He goes, yeah, okay, man. You can come ride with us, see how you like it. And so it was a desert interdiction task force.
Oh, shit. All like human trafficking?
No, drug trafficking. We were hunting the drug traffickers.
Yeah.
And so there's a system they have in a certain location that they use. And it was, I was like, holy shit. As a cop, fuck, dude.
It's like Border Patrol fucking
better
cop.
Night vision goggles than I ever had in the military or as a contractor. I was like, damn, dude. These guys are legit. So I had a good time with it. My run undercover got derailed, unfortunately, because of manpower issues with Phoenix. I think fully staffed, we're supposed to have about 3,000 dudes. We were down to like 2,500 dudes. So they started downsizing specialty squads and putting dudes back in uniform. Yeah. So my unit was one of the ones that got axed and put back in uniform. So then it was like, you can't show me how the other half lives.
Yeah.
And then now I'm like back on the beat, like, oh, no fault of my own. You know what I mean? Like, if you fuck up or whatever, guys get sent back to the street. Or if you promote, you got to go back as a sergeant and then go back to whatever unit.
Yeah.
So I was kind of bummed, like, dude, I was getting in a rhythm here. Like, now I discovered this desert shit. And I wanted to make that my permanent home, And so I got thrown back on the street, but I was lucky enough to kind of stay in the same area. And so, but I was a little bummed, like, damn, once it's
the dark side.
Well, it'd be kind of like going from the teams back to the fleet. Like, Do you know those guys get hotels and rental cars? What?
Yeah, no shit. Were there any run-ins in terms of any of the other undercover work that you did that you can share that that were pretty hairy that way? Not necessarily shooting involved, but I know like some of the stories that from the ATF agent Jay that he shared. Like one of the things that I found really fascinating and truly remarkable about kind of the acting job that exists is just that, again, that psychology. It sounds like it came a little more natural for him than it did for you.
Yeah.
In terms of your desire to be more of an overt, offensive type of application, but still, I mean, you spent some time having to gain trust. I mean, and to me, like whether it's street level shit or full blown national, federal law enforcement level, like the application's the exact same. Like that process that exists is no different. And I'm curious, like what were some experiences that you had in terms of gaining people's trust and anything you can share as far as that goes that you can relate.
Yeah, it was tough. I learned a lot from my team leader who brought me into the community. I also did a security job with a dude who was a FBI undercover guy, and he was the money guy for high-level coke deals. And so he used to tell me, like, dude, I'd be in bed the night prior. I couldn't sleep. I'm going over scenarios. And so I kind of found myself in that boat. Like when I knew something big was going on, because we always try to catch the bigger fish and get info on basically, where did you get this shit? And so the bigger the fish got, the more nervous it gets. Like, fuck, what if this or what if that? You can what if yourself to death. So I would find myself kind of psyching myself out. That's why I thought, dude, I'm more the dude that just wants to come through your front door. Like, I know there's risks with that, but like to me, there's not that many what ifs.
Yeah,
it's kind of one way or the other. And that stems from our background. You're going to assault an objective. One of two things are going to happen.
Either they die or you die.
That's it. It's fairly cut and dry for what it is. Whereas in this world, it's a big gray area, man. It's weird. And I'm somewhat empathetic in that I don't want to say I started a bond with these people. I never lost sight of the mission or what we were there for. But in a way, I felt kind of like, fuck, dude, these guys are fucked up people, but is there a way to help them, or why are they here? I still just started questioning stuff, not why I was there or what the mission was, but I've always been kind of a huggy bear. Like I said, I was raised by a single mom. Like, I can see why people might go down the wrong path. Maybe they just made the wrong friend when they were younger. I think I put too much, the proper word's not even emotion. I thought about the situations I was in a little too much. It wasn't so cut and dry to me, because you're dealing with people that have families, maybe even have fucking dinner with dude and their family, or you know what I mean? Like you're pretending to be a bro. And there was a part of me that, because I consider myself a pretty genuine dude, I'll make peace for a while, but there's a point where you're going to know if I don't like you or not.
Yeah.
I try to avoid conflicts, but at some point I will put the cards on the table. Whereas in this profession, you got a mission to accomplish. So you can't put your cards on the table. So for me, that was the most difficult part, is actually interacting with somebody's lifestyle, and then disrupting it.
Yeah.
So it was a different experience for me.
Did you ever have conversations like that with fellow guys? Like, hey man, fucking like this dude, like, yeah, I know he's mixed up in some bad shit, but like, goddamn, like, did you find yourself having those types of conversations with fellow law enforcement officers? Or?
A little bit. Law enforcement, people are a little more shy to show their emotions or concerns or fears. I think it's probably the same in the military, except the community you and I come from, we might share those things a little bit more with each other than the average service member. But I noticed a lot of cops bottle shit up inside.
Yeah.
They don't, it's kind of a bravado thing. When you and I were in a platoon, we're on top of each other 10 months out of the year, 24 hours a day. So our personal lives are going to bleed together. Whereas a cop, you go home.
Yeah.
And so you kind of bleed your sorrows alone at home, and then you come back to work and pretend everything's all right. So my team leader who brought me into the community, we definitely had some conversations that were pretty in depth, but other members of the team, not so much, or other dudes at the precinct.
Yeah.
There's kind of that like fake in the funk, like everything's okay. you don't want to be seen as that weak link, or, oh, maybe he's not good for this job, we should pull him out, or whatever the scenario may be. I think cops they paint that smile on a little bit more than most people, because it's kind of how you have to be dealing with all this drama anyway. You just kind of deal with it. And
because there's obviously the work aspect, but then there's the coworker politics of it. That I can see how that'd be the case.
Yeah.
I'm curious. While you were doing that, was there an element of personal life where that started to take a noticeable toll on your wife, and even for that matter, I mean, I don't know what, I'm curious to hear about what your relationship with your children is, but did you find that doing that type of work, like I would imagine if I putting myself in that position, like for sure it would, did that have a toll? Did it play a role, and how did it impact your relationship with your kids, if at all?
Yeah, it did. My daughter was still with us at that time, so she was probably 14, 15 years old. Mm-hmm. So there were conversations that had to be had. Again, everyone was kind of concerned of that scenario of, what if one of these dudes you're working sees us somewhere? What do we do? What do we say? You know what I mean? So
did that ever happen?
No. Luckily, I worked down south and I lived way up north, so they had to have some gas money to get where I'm at. Luckily, but it's still creepy. You're in the same city. It's not like, I'm going to fuck these dudes up and fly home from Iraq. There's no chance I'm going to see Habibi at, the Circle K. Well, maybe a different Habibi.
Maybe at the 7-Eleven.
Yeah, exactly. Do I know you? Oh, yeah, I recognize you. I know that face. So, oh, shit, that's on camera.
That's all right. Go on YouTube and you'll get that fucking, the inside link on that one.
So, yeah, it was a little unnerving that, yes, we were still in the same city. So there were certain conversations that I had with my family that, if something happens, this is what you should do, and this is what I'm going to attempt to do. Nothing ever goes flawlessly, but this is where my mind's at, and this is what you should be doing. And so you had to kind of read them in a bit, to the program. And so I think it definitely made my wife uncomfortable. And I think my daughter, who was with us at the time, maybe didn't understand it to the level that my wife did. It was funny. After my shooting, I saw a dude who was on another undercover squad. He saw me at the store. He's like, bro, he's all high-fiving me and stuff. And so I did have that on-duty relationship that I met in a store, but it was with a bro, thankfully, he looked dirtier than I did, tatted up and stuff. And so it was kind of like we were celebrating work business in a public place, which is, who knows who's tailing him or whatever. But it was different. It was a different dynamic. But luckily with our department, there are details and projects that go way deeper than what I did. Yeah. And talking to some of those guys, man, I definitely don't want to do what you do. It was very similar to what Jay Dobbins was doing and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know how the fuck you guys do it, because I'm losing my mind, doing what I'm doing. I enjoyed it. There's definitely a satisfaction portion of the piece in that you can get more information by doing that than you can rolling around in a marked car all day. I mean, you can really solve some problems in a certain area
pretty quick,
fairly efficiently, utilizing that tool. But it does take a special person, man. And I don't think I was wired that way, just based on how I was brought up and what I did in the service. I'd much rather put on some gear and go for it than
just fucking man to man.
Dude, it's like up close stuff. And so my team leader loved it. Yeah. He just, I was in awe at just how natural everything seemed. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it was even weird for me to witness his interactions with people, because then I felt like, wait, I know he's full of shit. And this, it was such a weird dynamic, man. Yeah.
Was there, I know it was primarily narcotic stuff and lower street level stuff, but it was two things. Was there ever any human trafficking stuff involved in what you were doing?
There was a separate project not related to the narcotics that we were involved with, busting prostitutes and stuff. Yeah. And so we'd basically proposition them, get the deal done, and then...
Which you were a natural at.
Well, I spent some time in Thailand. Wait, we got to score hookers? Hold on.
Clark, we need you for this special gig, buddy.
I got this. And we basically offer them hooker rehab, go to jail or go to this little program, and we'd see the same chicks out 2 weeks later. But some of them were victims of actual trafficking, whether they were lured by internet scams or a pimp or whatever. And so some of these young ladies we were able to kind of liberate from their profession and stuff. A lot of them were just crackheads that just were doing it to do what they had to do.
Yeah.
I saw more of the human trafficking element on patrol because we would get a call that, hey, the house next door, there's a van that pulls up every night at midnight and whatever, suspicious activity. And there would be 40 illegals packed in a living room and stuff. And so it was more on the patrol side of things. When I was on the Desert Interdiction Squad, we were hunting dope, but we saw a shit ton of human activity. We didn't interdict it because that wasn't our mission. But
so it's something
I was in awe. Like, holy shit. We'd go up onto a position with our FLIR and just the desert's alive at night. Like, holy fuck, how many people... you see the remnants of it, the trash and the footprints, and people get injured, and just.
I mean, I remember even just training in the SEAL teams out at our desert training facility out in Eastern California, where you'd run into them occasionally. There was a couple instances where you'd just stumble onto dead bodies, or there was one instance where it wasn't one in the platoon I was in, but we were out at Nylon at the time and doing immediate action drills, IADs, big gunfight scenarios basically, and a dude got shot because he was walking through an area that we were lighting up, not we again, as a community, I guess, but or even at Laguna rolling up on people that had frozen to death or whatever. But I know that corridor running up through Tucson up into Phoenix, there's a hotbed of activity. I'm curious, I know it was outside your lane a bit, but was there any other experiences on the human trafficking side coming up out of Mexico that stuck out as being experiences for you, or was it just primarily narcotic stuff?
No, it's a lot of it. We came across a lot of injured, some dead people. I also did a side security job. A family had a ranch north of Tucson, and so again, we had a lot of injured people coming to our compound wanting help, and so. We give them water and call Border Patrol. Yeah. During the day, we would do a lot of tracking. You'd come across rape trees where you see bras and panties up in a tree where, the coyotes will stop and have their way with the females of the...
Goddamn, no
and
shit.
So, you see stuff like that, and it's just like, God, dude, what these people go through, to get where they're going, injury, death, rape, and then they're held in some small house in South Phoenix. And the coyotes will call their family and say, hey, instead of $2,000, it's now $5,000. They basically hold them hostage. So even on patrol, we would hit these, houses and basically liberate these people from their situations. And
God damn.
So it's heartbreaking. You see the struggles that these people go through, and there's a lot of dynamics that happen out there in the desert. You have your traffickers that come through, but then you have your rip crews that are going to come through and just, knock them off for their product or, hurt the people along the way. And then the cartels will counter that with other teams that will try to hunt the rip crews. And so it kind of becomes this tiered up warfare, even amongst the cartel, to get people in product across.
God damn.
And so... seeing things like rape trees or seeing things like these drop houses where there's, 40, 50, 60 people packed in a room in the conditions of, nudity and shit. And, so you kind of see that collapse of humanity. Like, man, it's almost like a slave trade. I mean, it's just people are pieces of meat for money, and then they up the ante to the families. Like, if you want to see your family again, now we want this much money. Yeah. So it's this back and forth. And Phoenix is just super busy, dude. And again, because of the narcotics, you have the gangs that come there, and a lot of narcotics kind of hub from Phoenix to the East Coast, West Coast, or those people come there, to deal with the product. So it's a very nice looking city, but I always equated it to, remember when you were in the swimming pool as a kid and you saw like the little beach volleyball and people playing, but you put your goggles on and you went under the water and you saw the hair and the toenail and the Band-Aid and, someone's fucking in the corner and you're like, oh my God. And then you peek back up and it's the beach ball and the birds, that's what
Phoenix, huh?
Phoenix, I think any big city's like that.
Yeah. There's an underbelly to it. That's fucking pretty sinister.
It is, man.
But, and for me, it's interesting to hear kind of the intricacies and the layers of the drug trafficking route and how it intertwines, and that, like, to me, it's fascinating to hear about the what you call the rip crews, and it's similar to to terrorism or anything else in terms of there's a lot of, it's like a fucking onion, there's all these different layers that when you peel them away, there's a complexity there where it's not super black and white. There's a humanity element of the human trafficking that's not black and white, and I think we on a political realm or variant, we talk a lot about the border wall, and I mean I'm a proponent of it. I think it just makes sense to have something there.
Sure.
Is that going to fix every problem? No, but I think like at a minimum you got to have some shit like that. But but politically, I think we get so polarized as a nation that there's always, it's each side, whether it's liberal or conservative, oversimplifies the fix or whatever. And when you talk to guys like you that have lived in areas like that and fought that type of lifestyle and mentality and culture coming up from there, it's not so fucking simple, and there's a lot of elements to it that I think that have to factor into that equation in terms of how to combat it. But do you have any insight on that or any opinion in terms of border security, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. From what I've seen and what I believe, definitely securing the border, I think, is a good first step. I saw the success when I was there in Israel. It was very active with suicide bombings in 2003. They built some walls, and suicide bombings on Israel proper dropped by like 99%. When the walls, it made it harder for dudes to get shit in to these areas, as opposed to before. They were walking across, driving across. Once those walls went up, it drastically halted. It's way harder. So the numbers went way down. The second side of that, having my wife immigrate here from Thailand, make the fucking process easier and affordable, and more people wouldn't do it illegally. I probably spent $10,000 in 8 years. She's actually a U.S. citizen now, but it starts with the visa and then a green card and then some freaky ass test that I couldn't pass. That she was reading me this test booklet, and I'm like,
fuck, I don't know. Google it.
Yeah. Like, holy fuck, I don't know how many seats. I'm like, I don't fucking know. And so the money I spent, because of course you can't do the paperwork, you got to hire an immigration attorney, and then he's got to fill out, then there's $900 for this form, and it's like, holy fuck. So if you made it like a $300 process and it takes 4 months, boom, you do a background check. So I think, one, secure the border, and then two, the more important factor is make it a reasonable process, and people wouldn't skirt it.
Streamline it.
Make it fucking reasonable. The immigration's fucking nuts. In fact, when we went to the immigration, this was to get her green card. So visa to green card, we had an interview, and the lady, part of the package was bringing some pictures of you together. So I'm like, well, who the fuck has pictures? Like, everything's digital now. Like, so I took some from my laptop, and I went to Walgreens, and I printed out 10 pictures.
And you're like, shit, that's the wrong one. I didn't want you
I'm like, hold on, that one's private. Well, and it was like pictures of me with her family, her with my family. And the lady goes, you only have 10 pictures? I'm like, how many pictures do you want? She goes, I need like 30 or 40 pictures. And I wanted to say, what do you want, pictures of us fucking? This is me with her parents, her with, like, obviously we're in different places. Like, this is not some elaborate. So I had to mail in several more photos. I'm like, what does that really prove, man? I mean, if I'm staging this, I could stage 30 more. I wanted to send her a fucking dick pic or something. Like, here it is, putting some D's and some A's, Did we get our green card? Fuck. So I was kind of pissed, like, damn, man. And my poor wife was nervous. It was cute. We had just recently changed our home phone number. So the lady asked her, what's your home phone number? And she's like,
I don't know.
And she's like, and I said, hold on, wait, this isn't fair. We just changed our fucking phone number. So I was like,
sure you did.
Yeah, like, I've heard that before. Fuck. All right, we're done. We're fucked.
Failed. God damn. That's priceless. No, it's good. It's good insight. And I think, again, to me, like, one of the things that I find most frustrating about this country, not this country, but the way that it works. I mean, I love the country to death. I wouldn't have served if I hadn't. But is that, a lot of times the people who are charged with fixing problems have the 30,000-foot aerial view and are fucking clueless when it comes to actually how to solve it. And to me, why don't you ask somebody that has a fucking wife that's gone through the immigration process? Like, ask somebody that lives in fucking Tucson, that owns a ranch in South Texas. Like, those are the fucking people you need to talk to. Like, I don't fucking know. Motherfucker in D.C. sure as fuck doesn't know.
Yeah.
Why are you asking him? And for that matter, I mean, not to get too off topic, but God damn it, when I watch like congressional, whether they're hearings or floor speeches or whatever, I'm watching most of these people that are congressmen and senators, and I think to myself, I'm like, in any other fucking capacity, if I saw this person, I would be on the fence as to whether or not that motherfucker ought to have a goddamn driver's license.
Yeah.
And this son of a bitch is setting policy and drafting pieces of legislation as to how our goddamn country is supposed to work. Like, I
agree, dude.
How fucked up is that? Like, most of these people can't even get out of their own goddamn way. I mean, somebody like Pelosi.
Oh, dude.
When I watch that fucking woman speak, I'm like, oh my God, you are out of your fucking mind.
Yeah, she's nuts.
But again, like, that's not just to pick on the liberal side of the house. There's plenty of conservative assholes that are windbags up there that are stepping over their own dick, talking about things they know nothing about.
Yeah.
Rattling off a couple of spoon-fed talking points, and I'm just like, how the fuck are you in charge?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, you ought to be sipping and sure watching Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah.
I mean,
they've been in this bubble for their entire lives, and dude, one of the things that you're getting near is, when did our government get so fucking old? Like, I remember when we had to take keys away from grandma because she couldn't drive.
That's what I mean.
This motherfucker's in Congress writing laws
for 40 years. Yeah, like, dude, you got some. Dude, you got to go out to pasture. Like, I mean,
Well, you know how old people get? They get stubborn in their ways, and they start thinking weird shit. If there's an age cap on the bottom end, there should be an age cap on that upper end.
Yeah, no shit.
There's some geezers in there that are batshit crazy. Like, they're like the old dudes in the Muppets that are up there heckling everybody, dude.
The fucking peanut gallery up there. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's mind-numbing. But, to me, on a broader perspective, my point with that is not to pick on old people.
We love old people.
Fucking love old people. To me, there's nothing better, honestly, than shooting the shit with people that are 80 plus and asking them about their insight on life. But that doesn't mean I want you drafting legislation as to where our military should be involved.
Well, and there is a gap in generations too. The older you get, well, what's current? And like, my mom was born in the 30s, so how is she gonna understand? Kids,
fucking Facebook,
kids snorting condoms through their nose or whatever they're doing now.
Tide Pods.
Like, what is that? Like, never mind.
What the fuck is a Tide Pod?
Yeah.
But anyway, my point is that to me, like, I love getting somebody like you to shed some insight on border policy, on immigration policy, because you've lived it.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're just some liberal asshole that's from San Francisco that invented a tech company. Like, you served in the military, you were a contractor overseas, you were a fucking cop for 8 years. Like, motherfucker, you've lived it. And if anybody's perspective ought to be fucking heard and warranted, it's somebody like yours. And so I appreciate you sharing that. But as we kind of wrap up the towards the tail end of the interview, or bullshit session, as it were, I'm curious, as you transitioned from being a cop to what you're doing now, which we'll get into, was the biggest question I have is one, was that a hard decision to do? And can you give us a brief look at what that was like?
As far as leaving law enforcement?
Yeah, making the decision to say, because, to me, like, I did the same thing. Not for quite as many years as you in terms of quote unquote public service, but from 18 to 30, I was working for Uncle Sam. But for you, similarly, like, you'd spent most of your adult life, whether it's military, contractor, or cop, like, serving the greater good or being a public servant to some degree, or other. And so, now you're, in your early 40s, and it's like, okay, I'm kind of starting over. I'm walking off the plank basically into uncharted territory. What was that experience like? I know what it was like for me. It was fucking terrifying.
Yeah, this was actually scary to me, because prior to that, I had transitioned to something that was similar enough that I didn't feel like a complete foreign idiot in a situation. I like, okay, I transitioned from this to this. This leaving law enforcement was my first leap back into the real world. But I caught a bug early on in law enforcement a lot of dudes couldn't pass the handgun qual. And so I would rehab shoot them. I would meet them, a week or two prior to the qualification, and just really, you fix 2 or 3 things and dudes are drilling it.
Yeah.
They just have bad habits because they were old timers that were trained with revolvers and they're still doing weird shit with a Glock. Whatever it was, within about 10 minutes, I could dial them in, and then I'd work with them, about a half hour or so, an hour on the range. So I kind of saw like a gift there, like something I enjoyed. Like, now this person that couldn't pass the qual is well above the minimum standard, shooting a lot better than they were. And I saw the satisfaction in them, and that gave me satisfaction. So I kind of caught the instructor bug. I wanted to go down to the firearms detail with Phoenix, but that's kind of a retirement community. Like, there's people that have been there for 14 years and they haven't taken a report since 89. Like, it's just, it's hard to get a slot down there because it's some departments you can go specialty for 3 years and you have to go back to patrol, or 5 years and back to patrol. Phoenix, you could just go there and disappear. But I caught the instructor bug just helping dudes pass the qual. Around qual time, my phone would blow up and I would just meet people and kind of help them and pay it forward. So I enjoyed that, being able to translate some of my knowledge to something they could understand and become better at. So I started looking at my timeline like, all right, dude, you're in your 40s. Regardless of what community you're in, you're only operational for so much longer. What are you going to do? Like, what's kind of your 10-year plan? And I thought, teaching would be cool. I like firearms, and I'm developing this ability to translate it into, people picking it up and doing better with the firearm. So my plan with becoming a firearms trainer in the law enforcement community didn't work out because there's just no slots available. So when I got out, that was my goal. I wanted to teach people firearms, and so I got involved with a couple different communities in the Austin area, and I've recently branched out on my own, and I've been contracted out to other companies, and a buddy of mine, we formed our own mobile training team company, and so we've worked together for about a year and a half, me and my buddy JB, and we have a good system that we've put in place, and we've got a lot of positive feedback from the people that we've trained, and even some of the stuff we post on social media. We'll get a question, some law enforcement, some civilian people, hey, how do you shoot on the move? And so we'll make a video of it, and I always believe in, this kind of stems from my contracting days. I don't believe in absolutes. There's more than one way to skin a cat. As long as you're safe, obviously the absolutes lie in safety. Yeah. But I like to explore different ways of doing things. And so we've had a really good time as far as the whole training thing. So that's currently where I'm at. And I'm able to speak to different groups because of those different backgrounds. I have a pretty stacked deck of cards. So if I'm training with cops, they dig the fact that I was a team guy, but they're like, oh, fuck, dude was a cop. Like, he speaks our language. Yeah. So I've had a lot of success. Mainly I'm interested in training the patrol officers because their training is limited. Their ammo is limited. Yeah. Most SWAT dudes are pretty squared away. Their tactics are pretty fucking current. They're good to go for their mission statement. But it's the patrol person, the chick or dude
the 50 rounds a year for the qual, and
that sucks. That's it. Some of them only shoot once a year. Yeah. And so that's kind of where my focus is the average patrol officer, or the first time gun buyer that just like, one of my first clients had a ranch out in Texas, and her husband died, and he was always kind of in charge of security, but now that he's gone, I got to protect myself. I don't really know how to use this. And so that's really where I found a niche, is kind of the entry-level firearms people. Having said that, I just came back from Memphis training some recon dudes, so I've now been thrown in the deep end of the spectrum, and I had a blast with those dudes. So my instructor path or career has now grown to training active duty dudes. Super humbling, super awesome. It was cool to see a younger generation of energized motherfuckers like we were when we were 20. Yeah. And still being able to hold your own, because they'll call you out, and still stepping up to the plate and crushing a homer, because if you fuck up, especially Marines will let you know you fucked up. So hey, just suck in my beer gut and go for it. So it's been a good journey, dude, and I hope to continue it. I really enjoy the training aspect of things, man.
Yeah.
It's cool.
That's fucking great to hear, and to me I know for me, being able to, whether it's work with cops or military guys on the canine side, like there's nothing more rewarding than that, and it's neat to see, it's weird being in the position of having like the younger generation, like we were always the younger generation, now there's a younger or even two younger generations, below us that are kind of carrying the torch, but to be able to offer some insight and pass on any type of lessons learned or training knowledge or help in any way, to me is the most fucking rewarding thing out there. It really is, man. I love working with, again, whether it's law enforcement or military, and being able to do that is great. And I love that that's what you're doing. I'm super fucking proud of everything that you've done. The journey and path that you've been on is one that is one that a lot of guys, from our background go through, and I think is largely, under realized and underappreciated in our society. And I'm fucking stoked and glad that you were able to come here and share that with us. It's interesting as hell. Been great to catch up. One thing that before we wrap this up, I do want to make sure that for everybody out there that that may be interested in something that you can provide, where can people find you on both social media and whether it's website or kind of contact info, so that they can get a hold of you for any type of instruction training like that?
Yeah, definitely. Right now, the best place to get a hold of me is I don't do a whole lot of social media, but I have Instagram, Frogman2155 on Instagram. I just left the company I've been training under as of April 2nd. So my buddy and I are in the process of forming our own company. Yeah. So there's nothing really solidified as far as website, or even our company name got shot down by Texas Corporation Commission. Like, nope, that already exists. So you got to pick a new name. I'm like, dude, it was such a great name, dude.
What was it?
It was Alpha Group Concepts.
Yeah, so that's already taken, huh?
Yeah, it was Alpha Group Incorporated was a company. And so Texas has, if two of the words are the same, I'm like, damn, they're just like tech nerds. Fuck them, man. So I was like, me and my buddy's, he'll hate me for saying this, but he's a Marine with 2 Purple Hearts. I love to brag about his Purple Hearts because he gets so embarrassed about it. Like, he's just such a mellow fucking dude, but a super cool story. He's an awesome dude. And he's really big into the combatives. He pioneered the Marine Corps martial arts program. So together we cover a lot of bases.
Yeah.
He adds the combatives aspect, and I add the firearms. And of course we cross-train each other. So now both of our skill sets have gone way up because of each other. So if you contact us through my social media is Frogman2155. His is John.Badon, Badon.
All right.
Jean-Claude Badon on Instagram. And hit us up, send us a message. And now we are available for mobile training because I got a lot of requests like, hey, I love what you guys are doing in Austin, but shit, I live in Michigan, or whatever the deal was. So now we'll come to you. We just need to figure out the business plan of how many people need to get together so that we can pay for gas and all that stuff. So,
and we'll link all of the contact info in the episode notes and all that on all platforms, whether it's iTunes or YouTube or whatever. So if you do want Clark and John Claude Badon to Big Dong to show up and fucking rain some fucking pain on you guys, it's as good as it gets. But anyway, we'll link that up. Again, the one thing before we finish this up, I just want I like to ask of most folks, because I think it's important. It's one of the things I start every day with, is being grateful for shit. I write down 3 things that I'm fucking grateful for first thing in the morning. I think it's important, but I also like to wrap it up with just if there's something that kind of encompasses or a primary thing in your mind that you're most grateful for. What is that?
Yeah, for me, it's simple, man. It's faith, family, and friends. Definitely, my beliefs have got me through some tough times. Family to me is huge. My upbringing with my mom, but currently my wife, Goose, you're out there. But seriously, she's held me. We've been together 14 years.
Yeah.
She was with me from Israel through all the other shit that we covered.
Yeah.
Being a cop's wife, she's been to several cop funerals with me and dealt with other things. And so my wife, my kids obviously have been huge. And then next to that is the brotherhood that I've accumulated, yourself included, that I've just been blessed. Like I can't believe I have a seat at the table. I'm just kind of that Forrest Gump dude that stumbles into shit. And so faith, family, and friends being the brotherhood, I've been very lucky. So those are the three things, that I'm grateful for, and I give prayers of thanks to. And just it's a good thing, man. It's super humbling.
Yeah. Well, that's fucking great, man. I appreciate you sharing that. We're going to wrap it up here. One thing I do want to mention that we're going to do kind of off the scenes. We got some beef ribs smoking. We're going to indulge in them. We are going to include that on the YouTube video. Clark is also, like you mentioned earlier, a guitar connoisseur, as am I. So rest the fuck assured, the two of I, Jesus Christ.
It's Latin, I think.
I think that is. It's Hebrew, maybe. You can relate. Is that the two of us are going to strap on our axes and fucking get after it on guitar here in a little bit.
Nice.
We are going to videotape some of that and throw that on YouTube as well to embarrass the shit out of both of us. It's going to be epic, rest assured. Yeah. I was trying to get Clark in a bite suit. I don't think that's going to happen, but maybe if I call him out hard enough, he'll do it. But anyway, so check out the YouTube video. We'll have some extras, some B-roll type stuff. Again, ribs and guitar and all sorts of good shit. But most importantly, for everybody out there listening, the success that Mic Drop has had has been absolutely overwhelming, humbling to say the least. The reality of it is that none of it would exist without your guys' support. And I will say this every fucking episode because I do appreciate the hell out of it. I do really enjoy doing this. It's something that I really didn't expect to enjoy doing to the level in which I do, but I will continue to do it as long as you guys want me to. But more importantly, it's the guests like Clark and the preceding guests, and ultimately you guys, the fans, that makes this possible for us to be able to do this and bring it to you. So thank you to you guys, all the supporters of Mic Drop. Thank you to Clark for coming and spending the night and sharing your journey with us. It's been fascinating, and I know people are going to enjoy it. And again, ultimately, I can't thank everybody enough. One real quick thing. In terms of the reviews, especially on iTunes, I've gotten some fucking hilarious ones that I will read at some point. But I am going to hold a contest where there's been a number of funny ones. If you, we're going to do a contest basically between now and when the next episode drops, is to whoever can come up with what I view as the funniest. It's got to be funny, like it can't just be smart ass or whatever. Or blowing smoke. I'm not interested in having smoke blown, but just funny ones. There's been some hilarious ones. If you come up with whatever the funniest thing you can come up with, we're going to have a Tricos package that'll be a book, T-shirt, coin, and some other good shit in it. Signed stuff and whatever that whoever comes up with the one that has me laughing the most in the next 2 weeks is going to get that Tricos gift package. So go on there. Rate it, review it, subscribe to it, the whole ball of wax, and we'll give some good shit away here. But anyway, Clark, my man, appreciate the fuck out of you coming. It's been awesome. Looking forward to the rest of the night. That isn't going to be on YouTube. And,
I hope not.
That'll be on PornTube. But anyway, thank you for coming. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for everybody for listening. Until next time. We will see you shortly, and as always, this is Mic Drop.